All right, I think we are live. So welcome everyone to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a pretty good week here so far and weekend. And thanks so much for stopping by. So like all the other usual live streams, we're going to go for about 2 hours or so. I'll give priority answering to anyone who does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member there with the green usernames. They always get that priority answering. If you also would like that, there's a link in the description. We'll see how many people show up tonight. I know there's an important football game, which I think is still going on. I think it started at 6:30. So maybe people will trickle in later here if the game ends in the middle of the live here. But thanks to those of you who did show up. I see we have Brian, Kevin, Vishal, Tony, and Theodore, Chad, Raphael, Mr. 705, Wheatman. Thanks so much for stopping by, everyone. And Brian says cars I saw this week was an Aston Martin in red and a blue Dodge Challenger. Very nice. Vishal says his spot this week was a two-tone three-door GTI, similar to that two-tone Jetta you saw at the junkyard. Interesting. Not sure what exactly it is. Seems to be a Volkswagen thing. Oh, okay, yeah. So is there a different meaning for two colors versus three or something? I don't know. That's interesting. Yeah, that's I don't know. And I see Tony says that his spots this week were or not too many because of the lovely New York weather, but only one he saw was a late 90s SL600. It had the Rentec label on the back. Badass if it was real. Yeah, that would be sweet. My fun spot this week, I couldn't believe it. I did a full turn my head, break my neck kind of thing looking at it. There was someone using a Mitsubishi Pajero, I think is how you pronounce that, the Japanese right-hand drive Pajero from early 2000s or something, with the mirrors mounted on the fenders, full-blown JDM right-hand drive. And they're using it for mail delivery up in a rural neighborhood here well beyond Pittsburgh. But I couldn't believe, I was like, whoa, what's that doing? Oh, it's delivering mail. That's amazing. And I'm assuming they brought it in, under the 25-year rule, because I think with postal carriers, if you're rural, you use your own vehicle, and I don't know if they give you a stipend or how it works as far as reimbursement, but I think you can kind of pick your own vehicle. And actually, I know someone else in Ohio that does that same kind of thing, and they had a right-hand drive two-door first-gen RAV4 they were delivering mail in for a long time, which was really cool. So kind of a silver lining. I mean, obviously hard to condone any government work these days, but if you want to drive around in a right-hand drive JDM vehicle in the middle of nowhere where probably no one's really bothering you all day, being a rural mail carrier might not be a bad gig. Again, once I mean, I guess maybe they don't have as many of the same tumultuous ups and downs like you have with other government workers. But anyway, so that was my fun spot. I don't think I've actually seen one of those. At least the JDM ones, because we got the Montero, and at first I thought it was a Montero. I think they're similar. I'm not super sharp on my old JDM Mitsubishi SUV stuff, but it looked like a Montero at first, and then I saw that it had a Pajero badge, and again, clearly JDM with the fender mounted mirrors and stuff. So that was pretty exciting for me again, especially also here, with the crappy weather we have in Pittsburgh, we don't see too many cool things too often. So that was definitely, I think, the highlight. Let me see. Theodore says happy Sunday to you and your family, and keep up the great work. Thanks for continuing to watch, Theodore, and I hope you and your family have a good week here going forward as well. And let me see. Thanks everyone else for saying hello. And let me see. Chad says he saw an older Diamante on his way home from way to work that was pristine. Nice. That's sweet. So you saw another rare Mitsubishi. That's, I guess, the theme of the week here. That's awesome. And Hamburger says, hey, Matt, how would you rate the Mustang Bullitt generations according to you? I guess according to me, my favorites, I still think that the 2019 is the best Bullitt that they made. I don't think it's the best one from a heritage standpoint. I think the 08 is hands down the best one, as far as if you actually want something that it's the closest to the 68 car. The 08 is still the best one, because I think it has, power that's more similar to the 68. The look obviously is exactly, 68, very, very close to it. Same with the interior, it's the most retro interior. And that's kind of why I regretted never getting an '08. There's so many things where if I look back, like, oh, I could have done this differently. I that could have been another move instead of, I talked in past live streams about maybe, when the mini started crapping out, I almost went for a Fiesta ST, which I wish I would have had a chance to own as well. But also that would have been a pretty cool time to, pick up an '08 Bullet. And just like, because that clearly at that point, it was, again, the next four Mustangs were all dark green Mustangs, and the fourth one was the Bullet. But like, that was always the goal. And instead of, I just love the S550. I thought they were so impressive. But in hindsight, I kind of wish that I would have possibly at least given a try. Maybe not the entire time while I waited for the Bullet, but for a while there would have been fun. Just to cycle through cars a little more often, and maybe go for the '08 instead. But yeah, and to me, the '01's never really had much appeal. It was the original, and there's still some cool stuff about it, but to me, the '01 is far and away the last place one. And so I think, yeah, I'd say 2019, '08, and '01. But '08, I think, is the most true to the original and the spirit of the car and all that. Thanks for the fun question, Hamburger. Raphael says, I'm definitely watching the game, but I can watch the stream too. Awesome. Well, thanks for being willing to multitask here. Appreciate it. And Luke says, I've missed the last couple of live streams. I've had to get up early for work. I'm in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey tonight. Last exit before New York City. Oh, crazy. Well, hopefully you can stay out of New York City with the truck. I'm sure that would be no fun. Yeah, I hope that goes well. I hope you get some good sleep, because I know, at least whenever I stay in New York City proper, there's always sirens going off. Like, I can't get a good night's sleep, at least in a hotel in New York. Even half these times when I'm up, 30 floors or whatever, it's like I still just there's always commotion. Anyway, Luke also says he saw a Chevy Avalanche on dual rear tires. I don't know how they built that up. Oh, interesting. Wow, so like a dually Avalanche. That's got to be the only one like that in the world. That's pretty funny. It's a cool spot. And that one other guy says, just did auto show test drives. Fiat 500e was fun. BZ Limited was fast. Nice. I'm glad you're getting to try them all out. And yeah, I guess all those regional auto shows are probably starting to kick off here pretty soon, right? Yeah, because I think the Pittsburgh one's always like around Valentine's Day. So they're all, I think some of the other ones, I think DC is coming up here in the next couple of weeks, right? But yeah, glad you got to try those out. That's fun. I'm glad they brought a Fiat 500e to the show. I thought they completely abandoned all hope with that vehicle, but I'm glad that they're putting it out there for people still. I am like, just a little side note, because I was looking on the Fiat site the other day just for, I don't remember why, but they haven't updated the site. They're only showing 2025 Fiat 500es. And again, I'm sure, as far as website priorities goes, I'm sure the IT team or whatever is going to do the Fiat website last as far as updating Stellantis stuff here for 2026. But I'm like getting a little worried. I'm like, is there going to be a 2026? I don't know, because after these past 2 weeks, I have no faith in Stellantis keeping anything around that's not a Ram or a Wrangler, honestly. So I'm a little nervous, to see what happens there. I hope that they do keep it around. Just because I think there's other good Fiat products. I don't know why they're not bringing more of this stuff over. Again, people say they want affordable cars, and I guess it's just the tariffs, which, if you've been following the news, this weekend, Trump threatened, I don't know if it's actually when it's going to go into effect, if it's an actual thing he's going to do, or if he's just talking about doing it. It's almost impossible to keep it all straight. Tariffs in general, it's all so confusing with who's actually at what and, all this stuff. But I believe the European Union was at a 10% auto tariff for imports, I think it's a 15%. And I think he threatened another 10% this weekend. So and that's assuming that the EU doesn't just give him Greenland. So if that is the way that things are actually going to go this year, is that the EU gets tariff 25% on any imports, then that really, first off, it very much vindicates Dodge for getting rid of the Hornet, because, clearly that situation is not getting any better. And yeah, certainly if they couldn't afford to, justify it with the current 15% tariff or whatever, then 25 obviously would have been the nail in the coffin if, Dodge didn't put it in there themselves. But, so I mean, I can't imagine that that's going to help with any of the other, struggling brands, especially in Stellantis. Like I'm pretty sure if this holds, it's 25% and it doesn't improve, um, I can't see them sticking it out with Fiat, even though the volumes are really low. It's just like why lose money on it at this point? If there's no redeeming reason. Um, I mean, I can't imagine that they are super optimistic about even this next gen Stelvio, even though it is going to be starting off it now. Sounds like with a hybrid gas, setup. I think that's supposed to come by the end of this year. I thought it was a 2027 model year, because we've already seen the patent, images of what it looks like and everything. But like, if it would be kind of foolish again, especially with how they're really having a hard look in the mirror. It sounds like, and just nixing, all this stuff like the plug-in hybrids and everything. It's got to be, if I think they'll probably wait for clarification, but if it's truly like Trump's going to say 25% for everything EU this year, or for the foreseeable future, unless World War III breaks out or something, then we got bigger fish to fry. But like, assuming that that's what sticks, then I would say Alpha goes away, Fiat goes away for sure. Any low volume imported vehicle that doesn't have a giant profit margin, like I'm talking like, like Maserati would probably still stick around because I don't know, they probably have, got 30 grand baked into each of those or whatever it is. But, with the lower margin stuff, forget about it. I think, it's going to be real hard for the other brands too, even the ones that do large volumes, because then you got to pay way more because you're paying, the tariff fee on huge, way bigger volumes. But, man, like it's gonna be like, I can also say like I'm gonna be driving the new Audi A6, the gas one, here relatively soon, and I'm even like wondering like, is that worth going on? Like, are they actually gonna bring the A6 here if that's new tariff holds? I might be driving a car that no one else in America is gonna get to drive. So I mean, I could do the review for the Europeans out there, but that's a very small group of viewers for me. So but like, I'm sure there's a lot of these companies which they're, now working overtime this weekend trying to, crunch numbers or figure stuff out if this does in fact hold. So yeah, it's just, man, I'm still so glad that I'm not in one of those leadership positions in these car companies, because man, it's got to be really tough. They're really earning their high pay these past year and a half here. But anyway, yeah, so I think, sorry for the tangent about Fiat there, but I'm assuming that that's going to go away, and and these other things. I don't think they built any minis. I think now they're all Oxford, and because I think they wouldn't bring in the Chinese built one, so I'm not sure. But I mean, like, yeah, I would assume mini's going to go away again if these things hold, because again, it's just like, what's the point if there's no margin anymore? And it's just going to be an uphill battle, then why fight it? Just take it away. It's still going to be existing in the rest of the world, so you can always bring it back. I guess again, you just got to worry about the dealership network. But aside from that, I mean, and you look at Jag, like Jag, doesn't have any new product to sell, and their dealers are just saying, okay, we'll just sell used stuff and service stuff. Thankfully, they also have Land Rover and stuff to fall back on, and most of the mini dealers, I think, usually also have the owner owns a BMW franchise and stuff. So again, I don't think it's going to be super critical. Same goes for Alpha and some of these others. They're not standalone typically, so probably not a big deal if they do want to bring stuff back, down the road. But who knows? Anyway, back on track here. Chad, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, we had snow in Florida, an event here. The second snow for my car. Didn't think about getting it off. Once I hit the interstate, the snow was hitting the windshield. Yeah, and I don't know what the laws are down there. They probably don't even have snow clearing laws. But up here, like, you're not allowed to drive. You're really not supposed to have snow on your car at all. You're supposed to clear it off, just because it can turn into a hazard for sure. And I mean, I can't tell you all the times that I've been dodging snowballs on the highway from, snow flinging off of people's roofs. And especially when it turns into ice and stuff, it can even get deadly. So, I mean, it's like, you got to make sure that stuff's clear if it is a lot. If it's a tiny little bit, I'm sure it's not a big deal. But it's pretty crazy though. I hope you enjoyed the little bit of snow you got there. And thank you so much for the super chat. And let me see. So Chad also says, when they do crash tests, do they have all the liquids in them or are they dry? We were watching Motor Week segment about IHS and noticed no liquid spills. They drain the fuel, but I think that the rest of the fluids are in there because I've watched, hundreds of their crash tests, and a lot of them, it depends on where the coolant tank is and windshield washer fluid and stuff like that. But in cars where it is up front there and it is part of the hit, I mean, I've seen spewing coolant in some of the crash tests and stuff. So it certainly has some fluids. I don't know how much they drain. I'm guessing it's just mostly the flammable stuff that they drain. But yeah, they want to make sure it's fully functional. So I would assume diff oil, transmission oil is probably still in there. I'm guessing it's just the fuel they probably drain. It's a good question though. I wish I had a better answer. And Lantern Tales says Forza Horizon 6 is going to be unveiled on the 22nd. I am going to pre-order the game immediately. That's awesome. I didn't know that they had a reveal date for it. That's exciting. I'm very much so. That's what. Yeah, just Thursday. Yeah, that'll be awesome. I'm gonna have to check that out whenever they reveal it. I'm really pumped. Again, I hope I have time to play it someday. But yeah, it sounds like it's really cool from everything we've heard so far. I'm pumped and I'm excited to hear your thoughts on it once you get your hands on it too, Lantern Tales. And Danny says hello. He says, have seen my dad a lot. My grandma's 09 Accord now has 92,000 miles on it. Mom doesn't want me driving in the snow. Rare spot, a black Isuzu Via Cross. Nice. Yeah, that is a rare spot. That's awesome. I feel like those all vanished pretty much. It's a shame. And snow driving can certainly be tricky, but it's one of those things. At some point, you got to get the experience so that if you ever get caught in it accidentally, you're not completely without any experience whatsoever. So hopefully, you can get that under your belt here soon and learn how to handle the snow. It's not as bad as some people might make it out to seem. I was just in the grocery store tonight, and there was one of the younger checkout clerks was like, I never drive in snow. The second I start slipping, I freak out. It's like, you have control. Even when you're sliding, you have control. You just got to know how to do it, and that training is crucial. So I hope you can get some of that. And let me see. Danny says the only time I got to drive this week was Wednesday and Friday. Well, yeah, I'm sure with the snow and stuff, if it's something your mom doesn't want you out there in it, it's gonna make it a little hard, I'm sure, to get out there a little more. And Weedman says check out used Bentley Bentayga prices. Not bad for a W12 luxury transportation. Interesting. I didn't know that they've cratered too much. Yeah, I haven't looked at the pricing on those in a while, a long time actually. So I'll have to check that out. That's the kind of stuff I'm sure Wheatman. I enjoy checking out used Bentleys and exotics and stuff like that, just to see if any of them are ever remotely obtainable. I know we talked a couple months ago now about the Aston Martin Rapide, which is actually like pretty cheap, and it's a 4-door V12 that still looks really good in my opinion. That's one of those really enticing ones, even though again you're probably going to get just raked over the coals with maintenance costs. But yeah, used Bentayga would be cool. And Danny says, since my dad is in, he said when he drives my grandma's car, he said it feels like you hit the rewind button to 15 years ago. The Accord is going to 17 years old this year. 09 was 17 years ago. Yikes. Yep. It's there was something like that just that, I don't know, yesterday or today where I was like, man, like it's crazy how old I feel. And now whenever I stop and think about how long ago some of these things are, it's kind of crazy. Let me see. Mr. 705 says, would you rather get a current Tacoma or wait for the redesigned Honda Ridgeline? I don't know. Actually, someone brought this up in my my Honda video that I did this past week about all their future plans, and they're like, wow, like no info about Ridgeline, because everyone, I think myself included, was expecting, okay, we had Pilot, then we had Passport last year, and then this year Ridgeline. I mean, they could do it faster than that, but Honda's not quick with that kind of stuff, unfortunately. So, but everyone was assuming Ridgeline was going to be this year, and it's same as it always has been. It'll be a Pilot, Passport with the back end hacked off, and I think that would have been fine. And so, unless they're going to surprise us, it sounds like that's not coming this year, because that wasn't one of the things that they rattled off that they were doing. So it's going to be a little bit of a wait. I mean, for that question, it would have to come down to if those are the only two options. I'd say, based on how Tacomas typically don't depreciate that fast, if you're really trying to get into a new vehicle and you are on a bit of a time crunch and you need to get something soon, get the Tacoma, flip it into the Ridgeline if want, if you like the new Ridgeline whenever that eventually comes out, but don't wait for, that because it's going to be a while. Now, if you're not in any kind of hurry or content, it doesn't hurt to wait. If the current Tacoma isn't enough to sell you on its own merits, if you're worried about missing out. And also, if you're just into a unibody thing and you don't need, quite as much space as the Ridgeline, I think Hyundai Santa Cruz is really fantastic and kind of is a nice middle ground, between that and the Maverick, which is, a little bit smaller. I mean, Santa Cruz is still pretty small. The back seat's definitely smaller than a Ridgeline, but if it were me, I'd probably be looking at those alternatives versus a Tacoma personally. But Tacoma's a great choice as well if that's something, again, because of the resale values in particular, and also it's just it's a good truck. And Luke says it's pretty quiet. I'm sleeping at the delivery in outside of New York City there. Oh, that's good. I'm glad. And Lantern Tail says the 2010 to 2011 Mustang front end and the red taillights look really bad compared to the 12 to 14. Yeah, the 13 and 14s were really, that new headlight and taillight was so good. I agree. I think as far as S197s go, the 2010 to 2011 was like the weakest looking one of the bunch, in my opinion. Because I still love the 05 to 09. And then, the 10 to 12 was in, and then 13 and 14 were really, really good. Let me see. Dan is asking Chad about if Florida got shut down because of the snow. And Jordan, also, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, hey, Matt, wouldn't a crash test be more realistic with fluids, EV possible battery fires? So as far as the fluids goes, if they're not flammable fluids, then they're not. And also, they're not a large volume of fluids. So, you're not going to throw off physics really with, even if you do drain your power steering fluid. I mean, these are all very small amounts of fluid. The fuel is the one that is the biggest, but I think even that one, you can make the argument that, if you're in a crash, sometimes you have a full tank of gas, sometimes you have a quarter tank of gas. I don't know, if they compensate for that weight with other stuff, or if they put some weight in the fuel tank to, make sure that it's still has the same reaction. I'm not sure. And I mean, they may actually run it with the gas because you also want to make sure that it's safe and you don't have something imploding, if it crashes. So I don't know. Maybe they do have a full tank of gas. I'm sure there's an answer out there somewhere. I just don't know off the top of my head. But I'm sure if you go on their website, they usually have like how they test, why they test, what they do, and it might be included in there. They also have a YouTube channel where they go over some of the interviews with some of these experts that conduct these tests and stuff. So they might also have discussed it at that point, at some point, with that as well. Also, as far as EV battery fires, they crash test, the EVs, and that's also important because they do have a charge in the battery. There's always going to be at least some kind of charge in the battery, and that's also important to test to make sure that they are properly isolated and that they're not going to explode and all that. So and that also I think is a really good reality check for anyone who is freaking out about EVs and what happens when they crash and stuff. They can take really good hits and those batteries don't ignite. It's similar to gas cars where you hit them just right, sure, it'll happen. But it's I don't remember the statistics. I believe I remember seeing that it actually happens less with EVs than gas. But I don't know 100%, so don't quote me on that. But yeah, I think the only thing they said they had to do whenever they were starting to test EVs and the bigger ones, especially, was I think they had to beef up their wall for the small overlap, because I think it held up just fine for, stuff that's 5,000, 6,000 pounds. But then whenever you're talking about, these giant, GM things with double stack batteries and even Cybertrucks and stuff, you're getting up, over 6,000 pounds. I thought I remember hearing that they had to reinforce their, test wall there. But yeah, I think that might be the only thing they actually had to do to, accommodate for that. And Chad, also thank you for another super chat. He says Ridgeline is better off road than Cybertruck. Yeah, probably. And I have to say, Ridgeline, it's impressive what those can do. Because even the Pilot, which again is the same thing. I was on the media drive for the last generation Pilot in Montana, where I think it's called Black Bear National Forest. And it was, I think, yeah, maybe it's Black Mountain, I don't know, something like that. But anyway, we were going up like this really steep. It was mostly just like a grassy-ish hill. It wasn't like we were climbing an actual mountain or anything, but like it was steep. And you can watch that video. I think it was 2018 Pilot or 2019 Pilot, but it goes straight up and on all season tires. Their Honda's all-wheel drive system is very good in my opinion. So yeah, Ridgeline is pretty good. And yeah, Cybertruck seems like it's not the best. And it also has that weight going against it whenever you're trying to climb things in particular, or even descending, where weight usually is just not going to help you out when you're off-roading. In some cases, I guess, if you need certain amounts of traction in certain situations, but typically, again, you're working against physics if you're trying to climb or smoothly go down something. But anyway, yeah, thank you so much again, Chad, for the super chat. And let me see here. So Luke says 2023 Nissan Z is too expensive and not a good value. 2026, Prelude is overpriced. Nissan Z is a good deal. The way things change. Yeah. And I still will say that if Supra was still, going to be around, and obviously I'm kind of like Supras, I think they're going to finish building them, I think, in the halfway through this year or something. So they're still technically not dead, but I still think Supra is the better buy. And I think even these days it's like pretty similar pricing. I still think Supra is more fun. It's faster. It's more well sorted. Maybe not as good of a Grand Tourer, but in every other way, pretty much, I'd say Supra is a higher performer. But yeah, especially when Supra drops out, Z will be probably one of the better deals. You can still get a Mustang for that money and stuff. So I still don't. Z is a better deal than Prelude, obviously. yeah, there's no debate there. And this is why comparison is so important, because it's all about what you compare it to and what the other options are out there, and that's why it's a vital part of my car reviews, and it's part of why my car reviews can't be these little 10-minute, brush over everything and call it good kind of things, because I think that that's so important. And whenever you ignore the competition, car companies love it. They don't like the comparisons, but I think it's really important to let people know what else you can get for your money and all that stuff. But yeah, I think, yeah, Z, I really hope that, again, for this refresh, that they'll sell so many more, and they'll have so much more appeal if they do a base model with the LSD. They did it for the 370. They had the base Sport Pack version, which had the LSD and nothing else. And for enthusiasts, that's what they want. They don't care about the Bose stereo, most of them. They don't care about leather, Alcantara, whatever. They just want to go fast and something cool. They can do the rest of it themselves if they want, and I think Nissan would be wise to look at what worked in their previous playbook and say, okay, this was a good move. Let's do that again, especially if you're trying to get people off the sidelines. You already caught all the, big fish with the blank checks in the past few years. There's no need to try and, keep this some exclusive thing. Open it up, and make it more accessible. I think that's only going to help Nissan and justify the Z's existence, And let me see. Jordan, also thank you so much for another super chat. He says 2026 movies. Anyone here going to watch Mortal Kombat 2, Street Fighter, Mandalorian, and Michael Jackson's biopic? I didn't really know about any of those, but yeah, I'm curious if any of you guys have movies you're excited for this year. I just saw that Animal Farm is going to be, they're making a movie of Animal Farm with Seth Rogen in it. I think that's coming out in May, they said, which is very timely. I didn't I didn't know that that was even in the works, but looking forward to hopefully seeing that. What was the other? There's a couple other that I had on my radar for this year. Oh, there's that. It's the new Steven Spielberg movie. I think it's called Disclosure or something. Looks really interesting, and I mean it's Spielberg, so like it's probably gonna be good. So that's one I'm looking forward to. I feel like there's one or two others. Isn't there? I think there's a new Christopher Nolan thing coming out this year as well. I'm not sure, but yeah. Anyway, um, I don't see that many movies these days, but yeah, I think those are some of the ones that have stuck with me for now. Decepticon says it's going to be stacked as far as this year for movies, so I'm excited. Let me know what you guys are excited about for this year. Maybe I'll have to. There might be some stuff I haven't even known was coming, which could be cool. So let me know those. I'll give that a minute to cook here, and I'll move on to Jay's super chat. Thank you so much, Jay, for this generous super chat. He says, found myself talking about a 370Z at my work parking lot and decided to joke with my wife about getting a new car. Surprisingly, she said yes to my idea of getting a 2026 GR86 Yuzu edition. Wow, that'd be cool. Yeah, you should go for it. Actually, that's another thing I forgot to mention. One of the other spots I just spotted today, my local Subaru dealer just got in their first of the yellow BRZ. There's what do they call it? The Sunrise Edition or something? I don't know, but yeah, or maybe it's just Series Yellow. But they're doing a yellow BRZ and WRX this year. But the first, I just saw it in person for the first time. It was a BRZ TS my local dealer has in yellow. It's cool. It's a fun color for those, and yeah, I think that'd be really cool, especially if you get the Yuzu with the aero kit that you can get as an option on those. Looks really cool. I'm hoping to get one as a press car once things warm up here. But that'd be fun if you get one of those. As you know, I'm a big fan of Z86. I'm not sure if you've had any experiences in them yet, Jay, but definitely take it for a test drive if you can. Excuse me, and see what you think. It's not perfect, I still wish that it was a little bit easier to be smooth with the shifts. It's still a little clunky, at least for me. Maybe I just need more than a week with it to get smoother, but it's really good. And I just I just it's such a good car. And yeah, so best of luck if you do decide to go for it. Keep us updated. I'd love to give you a cheers and a round of applause if you get a GR86 here this year. And best of luck navigating that whole thing too if you decide to go for it. And let me see here. I see chat saying apparently there's the palm trees look cool with the snow and iguanas were falling out of the trees. That's crazy. And Danny says, oh yeah, by the way, since you were wondering about the oil change price on the Traverse on Wednesday, with the washer fluid refill, it was $97.01 with labor included. Not bad at all. Interesting. Well, yeah, I guess that's not bad these days. I was shocked though, like oil changes have gotten kind of expensive. I finally brought the Cadillac in for its adjustments and little fixes from the Lyric 7 complaints video that I did at the end of last year. Finally was able to get in because they finally had a loaner car, which I'll maybe elaborate on this. It's been an interesting experience already. So not to be a tease, but I'm going to see how this all shakes out and then decide, if I want to debrief everyone on how this is all going with the Cadillac fix. But anyway, I was sitting there at the counter waiting for them to do their thing, and they had their little like ads, and it's like, I think they said $249 for a cat, and this was not even just Cadillac. This was GMC and Buick. $249 for an oil change. Maybe it was a tire rotation as well, and like the inspection. I don't know. I was like, what? I mean, and then it was like they were like, well, you could also get synthetic. I think it was $300. Like for an oil change, am I out of touch? I mean, admittedly, I haven't paid for an oil change since I got rid of the Bullet. So I mean, but that's only been I did the oil change fairly, right before I sold it, which was, at this point a year and a half ago. But yeah, I don't know. Have oil changes skyrocketed around you guys? I mean, I remember, maybe I'm sounding like old now, but I mean, I thought that oil changes were like maybe $60, maybe 70. But like now it's like the going rate is $100 for an oil change. I mean, it's not that expensive. I mean, I'm also guess out of touch because like my buddy did a lot of the bullet oil changes as well. And with that, I mean, you can literally still buy, I think, enough oil even for the Mustang's huge V8. I think I went to Walmart and picked up, the Motorcraft oil that's recommended for that. And I think it was like $30 for the, whatever, there's 5 quarts or something. Um, and I will say, final thing about oil changes, then I'll move on, I promise. If especially if you have like a garage you can work in, if you feel comfortable doing that yourself, not only will you save yourself a bunch of money, but it's not hard. Sometimes, the first few times it'll be a little iffy. I did a video of here's how you do an oil change in my Mustang EcoBoost back in the day that was sponsored by Pennzoil, and that did turn out to be a little bit of a fiasco, but that was also because, again, I was undoing work from a mechanic who really over tightened stuff like crazy. But like, you have the peace of mind of knowing you did it yourself. And I even just had my one neighbor who went to an oil change place a month or two ago and got most of the way home, and then his drain plug came undone because I guess they didn't put in a new crush washer or whatever, and just pissed oil all down the road and up his driveway and, and everything else. Then he actually thankfully made it home and was able to get it towed from there. But like that stuff happens, and especially if you're a worrywart like I am sometimes, like if I had a car, I had to change the oil in these days. I probably would try and do it myself, just because, yeah, you've done it right. You save yourself a bunch of money and the headache, because it can be a headache sometimes getting in for these service appointments sometimes. So, anyway, but that's crazy. $97 for a Chevy oil change. I don't know. For me, that seems kind of high, but maybe I'm out of touch. Also, Danny says the Traverse for a month kept throwing the service StabiliTrak message, but now it hasn't done it in 2 months. So that's good. Hopefully it stays away. And Lantern Tail says, do you have any horror stories of bad experiences that you have had with cars or with Beth's cars, or even when you were younger and living with your parents? I mean, most of my bad experiences were with my parents' Ford Tempo, which was the car that, the first car for my childhood days. And that, I mean, left us stranded multiple times. I think I might have talked about this in the past. I won't go super in depth on it, but there was multiple times we were on a road trip going to Detroit from Pittsburgh at one point, and died on the side of the road somewhere between here and there, which isn't a long drive. It's like 4.5 hours to get to Detroit. So not a big ask from from the little Ford Tempo. And it wasn't super old either. So theirs was an 88. And it was our only car because they were just a one car household until 97. And it was, so at the max, and I don't think it was even like 96, but even if this was 1996 when this happened, the car was still only 8 years old, which I guess for an American car of that, era was probably an eternity. But like, some of these strandings though, I know it was when I was, even a little bit younger than that. But I still, I don't have a ton of like super vivid memories from, before I was like 5-ish, I'd say. But I mean, I remember getting stranded in that thing. There's one time we had just finished doing a huge grocery haul in the middle of summer, and we come out to the car and it won't start. It was just me and my mom that time, and just stuck in a parking lot. I don't even remember. I mean, we got it towed, but I don't even recall what happened. I know like the milk spoiled and everything just got ruined, everything that was refrigerated, because it's like, do you go back and just return it? I don't remember recall exactly what happened, but like that was not fun. But then being on the side of the road on a road trip, that was, and it was like weird because I think it was the alternator that went both times. I think it was just like a crappy alternator. We kept replacing the alternator. But the first time on that road trip, it's like it was weird because like the car was like struggling and we were worried it was gonna like die, but it was like chugging along. We were like struggling to like do the speed limit, which was already a struggle in a Tempo because it had, I think, like 90 horsepower or something. But Anyway, but even it was even slower than usual. And we were nervous, and then finally, yeah, it just conked out on the side of the road, and so we're just sitting there, and I remember the tow truck driver coming to and there was like a Wendy's like up over the hillside, and it was like dinner time, so my dad like scaled the hill to get us some Wendy's while we waited for the tow truck, and then came back down with it. And I remember like riding in the tow truck and like sharing fries with the tow truck driver. And yeah, so that was an experience. I honestly, I don't even remember how that got resolved. I guess I don't recall us getting a rental car, so I don't. But we were in the middle of a road trip, so I don't know. I need to ask my parents how that actually got resolved, because all I remember is like that, and the rest of it's been a blur. Um, and then yeah, I think there was only those two times where it actually died with me in it. I think there was one or two other times where it just failed with my dad driving to work or something too. But yeah, that was it. And then I mean, other bad experiences with cars. I was in a couple of car accidents as a kid. There was one time I was in one of my school friends' Chevy Lumina. I think it was a 95 Lumina. And it was just one of these things. I don't know if it was like a red light that changed or what, but everyone slammed the brakes. It was in the rain and just skidded. And we actually didn't hit anyone in front of us, but we got rear-ended pretty hard by a Cadillac DeVille, I believe, 90s Cadillac DeVille that like reamed us. Thankfully, I was fine. And it was funny because I mean, I was probably again like maybe 5 or 6, and I don't think I was in a car seat. I think I was just in the back seat. But they had such tall back seats, and I was so small that obviously the seat just kind of caught my head and stuff. So I think I was all right. But yeah, and then we were in Hit and Run whenever I was 10 or 11ish. It was in the year 2000, where we had the right of way, and someone just kind of blew through the intersection and T-boned us. That was pretty terrifying. I actually had some like actual legit PTSD as a kid from that for a little while, and had to go to like therapy to like work through it and stuff, because it was like I saw like the driver's face like in the side window, and like that was like burned into my brain, and kind of because the thing was a hit and run, so like he like hit us and then flipped it in reverse, and since we don't have front plates in PA, he reversed all the way until he was out of sight, and then like did a J turn and like took off. So we never got his plate. I knew the car was a Chevy Venture in the 90s there. And I knew exactly what it looked like. And another really bizarre thing, but I didn't stay at the scene. And instead, I swear to God, this is the truth. I hopped in the cop car. It was just me and the cop. And I was with him as he was racing around looking to try and find the car. Cause he's like, oh, well, you know what it looks like, right? And I was like, yeah, I know what it looks like. I'm really good with cars, as a 10-year-old. And my parents just like, I mean, it was a cop. It's not like it was, but like the cop was racing around, and like we were looking on every side street and stuff. And I don't know, we probably raced around for like a half an hour or something before like he finally, I guess, dropped me off at home. I think that's what happened. And my parents, handled everything at the scene, and, got it towed, and I don't know how that all got resolved, but like that was, again, just different times, I guess, with how some of these things I ended up in these situations. But so that was, I think, most of the bad experiences until, of course, like the Mustang stuff, which you guys are all well aware of, the 2 accidents there and the cursed Mustang. But other than that, I think that's most of my bad experiences. Thankfully, all of my other car experiences have all been really good. Beth's experience has been really good. I mean, the one thing about her Fiesta that really annoyed her is one day her defroster completely quit working in the middle of winter. So her windshield was like freezing from just her breath, and she had to like try and scrape off like the frost as she was just trying to drive to work one day. But I think that's pretty much it. I mean, this was a long time ago, so maybe some of you might have forgotten, but the only other thing with the S550 Mustang, with the third one, the one that replaced the cursed GT, that GT, the air conditioning failed on that. And the funny thing was it failed, and I was on my way to Street Speed 717's house because we were doing a collab out there with him. So this was probably, when was that, 2016, 2017, something like that. And it was a hot middle of the summer kind of day. So, driving on the highway with your windows down the entire time, it can be fun, but when you're 3.5 hours into a drive, it can get a little old, especially when it's super hot. And then I got stuck in that stupid Harrisburg traffic that sometimes happens, and that wasn't fun. But yeah, I mean, again, all that stuff, small potatoes compared to the stuff from when I was a kid and the Mustang actual, accident stuff. So I think those are the only bad experiences I've had. So only a handful of them. So I'm kind of fortunate, I guess, about that. But I'm curious if you guys have any good stories of, or I guess things that that aren't too horrific that you're happy to discuss. But yeah, I think that's all of mine. Fun question, Lantern Tales. Hope you guys didn't get too bored with that. But Zendaya says, "Matt is the goat." Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And Raphael says, "The snow is crazy. I got 14 inches in 2 days with a 37-inch drift in the driveway. Wow, that's crazy." So did that just happen in the past day or two, or was that earlier this week? Because yeah, we got like an inch or something here, but it completely missed us somehow. And I don't know, there was a brief thing that was saying that not this Monday, but next Monday, we were supposed to get 10 to 12 inches. And then that all went away. So I have no clue what happened there. But yeah, we haven't had any crazy snows yet this year. We'll see what happens. I think the most we've gotten was 5 or 6 inches, which isn't bad at all. And Lantern Tales also says, outside my gym, there's always an unofficial car meet, all sorts of nice cars and bikes you see parked outside. So every day after I work out, check out the cars and talk to people. That's awesome. Sounds like you guys got a nice little community there. And Chad says, Rolls-Royce versus Cadillac as electric yacht car competitors. What are your thoughts? The Caddy seems like new money and Rolls old school to me. Just dreaming. Yeah, well, actually, Top Gear just did a video about this I saw on their YouTube channel of the Celestiq versus the Spectre, which seems like a really fun comparison. I didn't have a chance to watch it yet. But yeah, I think that... I think that's mostly the correct characterization that you have there, being old school with the Rolls and new money with the Cadillac. But then there's also the very much traditionalist Cadillac clientele. I think most of them have probably aged out and probably are not into an EV. But you still might have a few of those like progressive older Cadillac buyers that maybe would go for it. The obviously very wealthy ones. But yeah, I think it's more so like now I think it's the other way around, where the Cadillac is going to be for the person who doesn't want to be another Rolls-Royce driver, wants something that's more unique and more that stands out. Because I can guarantee you, I mean, if you've ever gone to Rodeo Drive in LA, or you're driving around Malibu or any of these other very high net worth places, I mean, even in Aspen, I was seeing Rolls-Royces left and right, back when I was there last year. You're not going to see very many Celestiqs. And so, I hung around, pretty rich people for a while, back in my, early YouTube days, which is why, I have all the exotic, videos that I posted way back when. Just being different and standing out is more important than even the price tag sometimes. And so I think the Celestiq will do really well with that group of people, which I think, average people kind of underestimate how much appeal there is in having something that isn't another one of the same as everybody else. And especially with how Cadillac is, doing the one-of-one kind of customizations of, you want to have everything gold plated, you got it. You want to have, I mean, Rolls-Royce does that too. But the whole like one-of-one, like the amount of, rich people that I've, come across and known in, my cars and coffee circles and stuff over the past, decade and a half. I mean, the amount of people that like the idea of having a one-of-one or a one-of-5 or a one-of-10, even if it's some rinky-dink meaningless thing, like, someone was super excited about having an Aventador that was the Pirelli edition. No one cares about the Pirelli edition. No one knew what it even was. It was just a sticker and stripe kind of package, completely pointless. It's a cash grab. But he was excited. Oh, I got a Pirelli edition. It's like, no one really cares, but like that made him feel good. And, again, it's his money, and whatever makes you feel good, go for it. But like, so those types of things, even if it's a meaningless little package, can be enough to move the needle for someone in that, tax bracket. And so I think that's what the Celestiq will, is what that's why, I mean, they're selling. I think they said they got orders booked out for like 2 years, which is respectable. I mean, that was on par with Spectre. I think Spectre had about 2 years of orders. I know some people were backing out of them, as kind of the EV thing started to loosen up a little bit, but like, it seems like it's doing almost as well as Spectre from a sales standpoint. And also seems like with Cadillac doing only orders, Rolls will still, I think, kind of send a little bit of dealer inventory. So I think Cadillac probably has a better profit margin than Rolls at this point with that, because some of these Spectres, I've seen gigantic discounts on some of them, because if someone backs out of an order and it's already on its way or something like that, and a dealer gets stuck with it, or the dealer just gets one for whatever reason, some people are excited about them, but that's not very many people these days. So I think Cadillac's actually playing that correctly. And again, time will tell, but if they got orders booked out for 2 years, it sounds like they're not worried at all. They're like, it's doing what we planned for it to do. We're happy with it. And so I think they executed that really well. But as far as which one I want to live with, I haven't driven this Celestiq. I did see one, in person, but I wasn't even allowed to sit in it because I just did the first walk around of that car when it was revealed. But yeah, Spectre, as you know, I reviewed that. Very, very nice. If I wanted a super flamboyant and comfy, cruiser, Spectre's, one of the best for sure, for that. Danny says, I always call the Cybertruck a fridge or cyber fridge because of the stainless steel body and how freaking massive it is. Yeah. Yep. That or a dumpster, is what I like to refer to them as sometimes. Also, Jordan, thank you for another super chat. He says, what could be a solution to oil? If you're talking about it as far as the crash testing, you can even just fill it with water. I mean, it's not as viscous, but if you're trying to just compensate for the weight and the crash testing we were talking about earlier, you could just do that, I'm sure. Because it's not like those cars ever get used again. Once they're crashed, they're actually not allowed to even part them out or do anything like that. By law, they have to completely destroy everything on it because it was, again, tested. And so yeah, I don't think it would matter if they screwed stuff up by, pouring water into the gas tank or anything. Jordan, thank you so much for a super chat. Again, he says, Matt members, super chat, all the good and bad vehicle memories, call them out, no matter the year or make. Yeah, anyone who wants to share all their memories, feel free. It'd be fun. I'd love to hear you guys' stories. Thank you again for the super chat there, Jordan. And let me see here. Where were we here? Mako says, what do you think of the Evolve Automotive E60 M5 DCT swap? I don't know anything about it. But if it's the manual, swap for the M5, or is it the new DCT they put into the old E60s? So maybe that's what you're talking about. So you're saying SMG, and then is it going into the DC? He goes to the DCT. I mean, that'd be cool. I love all E60s in general. I think that they're really underappreciated. They're pretty cheap, and like that and the V10 Audis, the S6 and the S8 with the V10. There's no way, you can't tell me that those cars are not going to be big money someday. Honestly, like if again, not financial advice, but if I had 50 grand that I wanted to invest in, and it was a long-term investment, I think that parking your money into an E60 and out a nicely, obviously a collector level, a nice, lower mileage kind of one, and an E60 and an S6, S8 with the V10s, there's no way that those won't be desirable someday, in my opinion. There's no way. It's a V10. It's the only time those ever had a V10, the only time they ever will have a V10. And, I mean, in some ways, maybe not the high mark of those badges in their history, but like it's special and they sound fantastic. They drive well, in my opinion. It's crazy to me how cheap they are. So, I mean, if you mess with them and do the swaps, I mean, that's fine. I think a manual swap would probably be a better swap if you're, you know, interested in collectability and the value and all that stuff, I mean, maybe the DCT will help it as well. I don't know how, how the SMG will be viewed, if people are going to want these all original, or if they're going to want them to be, better drivers or what. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would probably err on the side of keeping things original, even if it's not great. I also think, I mean, yeah, sure, the SMG was not great compared to modern dual clutches, and if that's what's going in with this Evolve automotive thing, obviously it's going to be way better from a drivability standpoint. But I really don't think SMG was that bad. I had a lot of time behind the wheel of the M6 SMG because I had a friend that had one of those. I drove that thing back from like Columbus, Ohio once. I drove a bunch of times, and the SMG was really not bad. You just had to know how to drive it. You had to know, okay, I pull the paddle here and then I get a shift, 2 seconds later or whatever it is. But once you got used to it, I thought it was totally fine. Now, sure, I'd rather have it with a manual, but SMG was not as horrible as I think. I mean, maybe reliability wise it's bad. I don't know, but like from a drivability standpoint, to me, I don't think it would bother me enough to spend thousands of dollars to do some DCT swap, especially if you're getting a car. The part of the appeal of the E60s is that they're cheap. I mean, I guess you got extra budget to spend, go for it. But I think part of the appeal is, okay, yeah, you're getting some older tech, older infotainment and stuff, but you get a really special car that will appreciate someday, in my opinion, and you can still drive it and enjoy it and have fun with it. And it's a fantastic experience. But I don't know enough about I don't know anything about the Evolve thing to weigh in on that, but that's my thoughts on those in general, if you're wondering. And Chad says it'd be cool if they let regular people watch crash tests from the overlook. I saw them were watching from overhead and was thinking that'd be so cool to see in person. Yeah, so I'm actually kind of bummed. So the WAPA, which is the Washington Automotive Press Association, which I'm a member of because it's the closest automotive media group around me, they had like a tour with the IHS where you could go through and they kind of showed you everything. They actually did conduct a crash test, and everyone who attended that was able to see that. I would have loved to go. It's just, I know the video, if I would have done a video and here's a tour of the IHS facility, would have gotten like 5 views, like actually probably 5 views. So, it wasn't worth, an 8-hour round trip journey plus, it just would have been a whole big thing to do for something that mostly would have just been fun for me and a complete waste of time and money otherwise. But yeah, I'd love to go someday. It'd be cool for sure. But they do that, at least with media. I don't know. I'm sure they're not like selling tickets or anything, but like, maybe there's other opportunities where they have like an open house or something, maybe where you could watch something like that in the future. I'm not sure. But Lantern Tail says, do you guys remember the Lexus HS? This was the original Prius-based sedan from Lexus. I barely ever saw them. Yeah, they were pretty rare. I do know for like a time there in, like, I remember I was in LA and when was I there? I was in LA in 2011 or 2012. Yeah, I think it was 2011. Or no, it was 2012, I think. Anyway, I was there back when the HS was still not super old. And like in LA, they were pretty common from my recollection, at least. But yeah, anywhere outside of there, they were pretty rare, I think. I don't remember exactly how many they sold, but it's a shame that they don't really have anything like that anymore. I mean, you can kind of argue that the UX in a way is kind of like a successor to the CT 200H and the HS, but I don't know why they don't just do a nice small little Lexus, because I think the UX is super outdated and I wish they'd do something new anyway there. Why not do another Lexus Prius? I think it makes sense. Prius is a good seller. I guess they just assume everyone just wants an ES at this point, but surely if you come in with a lower price tag, there'd be people into it. But I don't know, maybe they just want to push those people into the Crown or something like that instead. But anyway, let me see. Na says, I saw 3 RX 350s in one guy's driveway. Is that normal? Same gen. So, uh, yeah, that is not normal. You're right. So Na is actually my one of my neighbors. He's actually the person who had the oil change where the oil fell out of his car there. So yeah, that is definitely not a normal thing unless you're a real big RX fan. So he is the Lexus RX fan. But yeah, not I don't I've never seen that before other than my neighbor. um, and let me see. Um, Chad says he always thought that they were cool, the HS, and there's still a few around there. I'm glad you guys still see them every once in a while. That's awesome. And Danny says, I forgot I did see a Lexus HS in that Prius baby blue. Wish Lexus didn't kill it. Yeah, I wish so too. And Decepticon, yeah, said it's gonna be stacked with movies. I'm curious if there's any recommendations for movies you guys have here for this year. So Digifax said yellow can take a year to sell, but supposedly retains value well. Yeah, I've seen some of those articles that are really interesting about, yeah, how some of these cars, I think, yeah, certain colors do take a long time. Interesting. Well, maybe that'd be a good scoop then, if you can wait it out on a yellow GR86 or BRZ, get it at a nice discount, and then maybe it'll depreciate less. I mean, any of those special edition ones probably will depreciate a little less than other, regular GR86s and BRZs, but I don't know how much because I haven't tracked the other special editions to see what they've been doing in the past couple of years. But let me see. And Lantern Tale says Super Mario Galaxy movie is also coming out this year. Thoughts on Jack Black being Bowser? It's coming out on my birthday, April 5th. That's awesome. So I didn't know all the details of that. I heard, I think that it was coming out, but I don't know anything about it. I didn't see the other Mario movie, which I thought I heard was pretty good. I just never got around to seeing it. But that's cool. I mean, Jack Black, I think being Bowser sounds like a fun idea. I've not seen the trailer or anything, so if he's in that, then I'll have to go check it out. But yeah, Jack Black's pretty cool. So it sounds like a fun time to me. And let me see. Danny says, okay, that Gen RX 350 is good. Maybe his family owns one of each as the personal cars. Yeah, that's what it is. The neighbor, yeah, it's like he's got one, his wife has one, and his son who lives there too, I think, has one now. And I think there's also another one too, because I think I actually see 4 sometimes. So I'm guessing it's just like they recommend them strongly to their family members or something. Yeah, I have no clue how that situation has materialized, but yeah, it's interesting. And Lantern Tales is just dropping GR Corolla for some reason. I will take that as an opportunity to take a little water break here. If you're drinking at home, enjoy. Cheers. And let me see. Yeah, Danny's saying we went 30 minutes without the GR Corolla mention. And actually we're an hour in, so hopefully I'm about a half an hour behind on comments. I apologize if I am. I will try and get a little faster here. But yeah, and Na says, not a brainworm. I mean, who's to say? The world may never know. And Jay says, if I'm able to save the down payment myself, would have to say goodbye to the STI though. Oh, gotcha. Well, yeah, I mean, definitely a downgrade in power. It just comes down to, how strongly you feel about the GR86. I think I remember you saying you really love the STI. So if you're happy about it, maybe just, stick with that. I mean, you will get better fuel economy for sure in the GR86. And to me, it's a little more lively, of course, with the rear-wheel driving, nature is just more fun in my opinion, but everyone likes something different. So definitely take it for a test drive. If you haven't driven a GR86 yet, give it a try, see what you think, and go from there. Yeah, thanks for stopping by Decepticon. And Joe says, I just paid $155 for my Challenger Scat Pack for an oil change. Interesting. Okay, I guess oil changes are just really expensive now. That's crazy. Oh man. I'm even more grateful to have EVs now, because now that's even more of a selling point. Previously, it's like, you save $50-$60 on oil change each year, but now it's like, okay, well, if I got to spend 150 or $100 or $250, then that makes me feel not so bad about PA charging EVs a $250 registration fee just to make up for the gas tax with my 1,000 miles a year I do driving my super efficient vehicle that would definitely not be paying $250 in gas tax. But anyway, that's crazy. And Jordan says that my family had a Ford Tempo. Tempo in Spanish means time, basically a moment in time. Interesting. Well, I hope your family had a better experience with the Tempo than I did. But that car is what burned my dad on American cars forever. I mean, he had some other not great experiences, which I think I've also covered in the past. But I guess the other two little experiences that didn't turn him off amazingly to American cars, but that Tempo was why he like never went back. He's like, I'm sticking with Subaru, and he's never left Subaru since then. But he had an Escort before the Tempo. It was a two-door Escort manual. It was an 84 and 84, 82. I think it was 84. He loved that little thing. He had a great time in it. Him and my mom both drove stick and both loved that thing. And that was until an 18-wheeler on the Fort Pitt Bridge in Pittsburgh, if anyone's familiar, was like coming over and trying to lane change into the far right lane where my dad was. This is before I was born, and pushed him up into the side of the structure of the bridge, all the cross members and stuff. Pushed him up into that, and somehow slightly lifted the car enough that it actually went end over end and flipped onto its roof, just being dragged by the side of an 18-wheeler pretty much. And he was fine. Seatbelt had him in, and he was good. But yeah, obviously totaled that car, and then that's when he got the Tempo. And then before that, he had a Pontiac Astra, which was not great. I mean, he hated that car from the beginning. It sounds like his dad just heavily pushed him into getting that. But the Astra, that was so rusty that there was one day when it was a manual, and he was shifting, and he put his foot down for the clutch, and his foot went through the floor, the clutch assembly included, and just went out into the road. And so that was the end of that car, I think. I guess that's when he went for the Escort, maybe, I don't know. But so those were his other two bad experiences. Yeah, that's pretty much it. My mom didn't have any cars of her own until she got married. She just was in a position where she was able to take the bus, and then they just shared the cars until the Tempo was actually her first car for herself as a hand-me-down once my dad bought the Subaru. So yeah, that was pretty much it. I mean, they've had other accidents in the past and stuff. But actually my dad hasn't. My mom has had two times where she's wrecked cars. But other than that, that's been it. But let me see here. Chad says, mom had a Sentra that Pep Boys messed up with an oil change, offered no money for trade-in. I was on the shrimp boat and told her I'd buy it once I was on land, fixed it with YouTube videos. Wow, that's awesome. That's so cool. You got to fix it yourself and hopefully helped your mom to not get a bad deal there. That's crazy. It's crazy they would have no accountability about that too at Pep Boys. That's nuts. Lantern Tail says his horror story from my childhood was when my parents were driving in their 91 Toyota Camry. We were driving on the highway. The car hydroplaned for a couple of seconds. Luckily, the car didn't hit. That's good, man. That's crazy though. It didn't hit the center median. The car had brand new tires. After the incident, the tires were bald. The car did not have airbags, as was typical of late 80s cars. That's crazy. So I guess it did skid at some point. That if the tires skid to the point of being bald, that's crazy. The car also had the cool looking powered seat belts. Yeah, the Tempo had those too, where they came up and down for the shoulder belt. Which, fun little aside, could you imagine these days if a car, or just it was a law? I think. I mean, if laws were so adamant and were so forceful that you must have a shoulder belt to the point that it automatically put it on you. Could you imagine with how everyone gets so upset about masks and all this other stuff? If your car, a modern car, it was like, well, you're not buckling up, so we're going to automatically buckle you. Could you imagine the uproar? It would be absurd. And I'm honestly surprised it happened in the 80s, because I remember seeing like interviews. There was some old YouTube videos and compilations and stuff of people um, who are like, being interviewed on the side of the road whenever. I can't remember what. There was a couple of funny ones. There was, I think these are both in the South somewhere, where it was like there was one interview whenever they, I think it was mostly just whenever they had made seatbelts mandatory in whatever state it was. And they're like, it's communism. They can't force me to wear a seatbelt. And it was a whole thing. And then in the 80s, they had they forcefully put a shoulder belt on you. Oh man, yeah, it would never fly these days if we didn't already have that. So that's funny. But let me see. And Chad says, do y'all have any weird driving quirks on your daily drive? There's a reflector on the turn lane I need to run over at the start of the line on my way to work. Oh, interesting. I don't have any habits like that. I'm curious if any of you guys do. Yeah, I don't have any habits like that. Yeah, I don't think there's anything like that I do. I mean, I have my like preferred routes, and sometimes, like the navigation will try and take me a different way. And I'm like, why are we doing this? It's like, I'm just going to go the way I always go. But yeah, I don't think I have anything like that. I'm curious if any of you guys do. And Jordan says, never liked the Jeep Cherokee. 99 had a Cherokee hit my dog after he escaped the walking leash. Oh, it's terrible. I'm sorry to hear that. He says, not Dodge, Jeep, Chrysler's fault, but just a traumatic memory. Absolutely. I don't blame you at all for that. That's, yeah. I mean, there's certain things like that too, where, yeah, there was something else that's like similar where like there's a car that's just been like a bad memory, and so it's just like not a car, from way back when, not a modern car, but anything from way back when I'm just like, I can't get into it. I can't remember. I did. I mean, I will say there's, if maybe some of you, if you're like my age, some of the younger people might not appreciate this, but if you guys remember like the 80s and 90s Chevrolet interior smell, in like, especially when it's hot, and they like really had this, like, it's every car in my opinion kind of had, or every brand has like a unique kind of smell, especially as they age. But Chevy's smell was like, especially like, I don't know, for me it was kind of nauseous. I don't know why. I guess maybe because I just wasn't in a lot of them. But I had two memories as a kid where I threw up in cars, and both times they were in 80s and 90s GM products. And I don't know if the smell like did it worse, or if it's just that I just had other reasons why I threw up, and it just happened to be in that smelly environment at the same time. It just burned into my brain. But like smelling like 80s and 90s GM stuff just still is not a good feel for me. The first time we were going to Baltimore, and I think it was I think one of my uncle, I think, had an Oldsmobile Cutlass. It was like a late 80s, early 90s. And I vaguely remember throwing up in the back of that. And then there was another time where this is actually when I biked the Cumberland Trail. This was in middle school. So this would have been 2002, 2003. My friend's grandfather is the one who took us on that trip. And he had the two-door Blazer. It was not even the rounded one. It was like the one with the boxy styling and the square lights. It was like a pale yellow color, two-door Blazer. It had to have been from the late 80s. And I don't even know why, if I just got car sick in the back of that thing for some reason. I don't know what I was doing, but like that, I threw up in the back of that thing. Dude. Both times I think I had like a garbage bag or something because I could feel it coming. But that's the only other like negative thing where it's just like, every time I like smell it, if like I'm in the junkyard and I, smell one of those or something like that, I'm still just like, don't love that smell. So, but yeah, I feel like there's something else, but obviously not a traumatic thing really, like, having, losing a dog. That's crazy. And I'm so sad that ever happened to you. But yeah, that's the only other thing I can think of where it's like a certain brand or, conglomerate, I guess, is kind of sticking with a negative vibe ever since. I think that generation of GM stuff is still fascinating, but just probably wouldn't want to be inside of them. And let me see. So Raphael was saying that was Wednesday and Thursday for the snow. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I guess that just completely missed us. But yeah, and yeah, we talked about this because yeah, I remember on the Wednesday live, saying how I was going to change my plans to go to the junkyard. So I still got to figure out when I'm going to do the next junkyard walk here. It's going to be a little bit of a gap, but I'm hoping to get back soon. And Lantern Tail says Anton Yelton was killed because the Jeep wasn't in park. It was back when they had their weird shifter design. Yeah, well, I thought it was that it was in park, but that the parking pawl or whatever that holds it in park failed, and that's what ran him over, right? I think that was it, which is so sad and tragic. But that did lead to a recall that was just like an actual fault of the design there. And there's been a few of other of those like parking pawls, which is the little thing that holds it, that has happened from other brands too. I think it's I don't know if it's just a weak point on cars or what, but I'm always a little iffy in general about like a car, like leaving it just in park on a hill. Like I always put the parking brake on, if I'm on a hill just to be safe. Because I don't trust park 100%. Let me see. Chad says, I was super excited to get a used Thunderbird. Would have been my second car. It blew a rod on the way home. Oh, that sucks. That's definitely a bad memory. Yeah. Hope it wasn't too hard to get that back on the road, or I guess move on to another car. That's crazy. Raphael says he had a car run a light and hit me on my Honda CB750. Wow. Knocked me more than 20 feet from the bike. That's crazy. Glad you survived that. Hopefully you don't have any residual effects from that or anything. That's nuts. Sorry to hear that. Chad says, seeing the way some lighting features are aging makes some cars look cheap. Dodge, Chrysler, Hyundai, Kia, Nissan, even some Hondas. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. I mean, even like sometimes I'll see BMWs with the angel eyes that are burned out and stuff. But yeah, it's some of that stuff. Yeah, it's some of these were more bold, daring designs, and that stuff always usually ages worse. Jordan says, Matt, people watch IHS videos more than you think, and actual viewing would explode on your channel, especially if it's a 5-minute clip update. Yeah, I mean, maybe if there's another opportunity in the future, we'll see. I mean, I did do the video on the crash testing, but that's at least like more consumer advice stuff with like, hey, here's the cars that are good in crashes and here's the ones that aren't. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, anything like that, if it's a risk or a gamble, I got to bundle it with something else so that I'm not down there just for that. So like maybe if next time there's an opportunity like that, if there's another one, like that at some point in the future, maybe I try and bundle it with meeting up with a subscriber to review their car or something like that, so that it's not a complete wasted trip if the other video completely bombs. Maybe it would do well. I don't know. I mean, people do enjoy seeing crashing, but I feel like it would have a horrible average view duration, which is, again, as a YouTuber, you got to think about all these extra things of like, okay, people saw the crash. Now, will they sit through the other 5 minutes of me showing the facility or hearing people talk about safety? I think most enthusiasts would rather watch paint dry, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Yeah, maybe someday I'll go to try. Chad says Slate did a commercial where they made onion dip in the frunk. I love their energy. That's fun. Yeah, I mean, and like Ford did a similar thing with the Mach-E, or whenever the Mach-E came out, they had dealers like fill the frunk with shrimp and ice, and they had like shrimp cocktail out of a Mach-E. I think someone else actually did wings in a Mach-E, and they're like, look, you can hose it down after you're done, and it was a whole thing. So yeah, it's kind of a fun little thing. I don't think I knew the Slate had a frunk. That's cool. Hopefully it's a decent size one, because that'd be great to have like a nice little trunk and have the truck bed. Yeah, that sweetens the deal on the Slate even more. I really hope that they do work with me this year. I hope that I'm able to review it or do a walk around or something, because I absolutely want to highlight that car. Honestly, if it actually is coming on time this year, we'll see if it actually does do that. But if it does, I think that's one of the cars I'm most excited for this year for sure. Sorry I missed all these super chats, man. YouTube is not good about notifying me about this stuff, so I apologize, guys. So Chad, thank you for gifting a membership. I really appreciate that. Also, Chad, thank you for the super chat. He says, it's communism. I can't drink a beer going home. Yeah, that was another one I remember. People were really mad about, the whole like one for the road thing. Like, not being allowed anymore way back when. Crazy times. And Jordan, thank you for a super chat as well. It says Stellantis, no 4 by E Wrangler for Jurassic Park films, but yeah, Charger EV concept featured in the Fast and Furious movie. I think a lot of the stuff for that is just coming down to timelines for things and when those things are filmed, because like the Fast and Furious, so was that Fast 10 had the Charger EV? When did that even come out at this point? I don't remember. It was what, like 2020? Was that 2020? 2021? Or, maybe it was a little later than that, but like it was in the height of EV hype when they actually thought, hey, this is gonna be a big thing. Let's, show this off. It's really cool. And if the Jurassic Park stuff didn't have the 4xs because they were iffy about them, or yeah, I'm not sure why they would decide to push one and not the other. I think with the Charger, they knew that was a little bit more of a sure bet of like, well, this is the way we're going with Charger, so we might as well show off the styling. And they knew they were doing the gas one as well, so it still made sense to kind of get that on screen and put that on people's radars versus the Wrangler. No one in an action movie is going to notice between it being a 4xe and a regular Wrangler unless there's a scene of them like plugging it in or something, which would be a little too, commercially. So I'm guessing there's probably not as much of a incentive there to do that. For all it could have actually been 4x's, because honestly, like a lot of that stuff with movies where they need to film interiors, they need to film stuff in studios, sometimes they'd probably actually rather have the EV or have the electrified component. So, maybe that is something they actually did end up using and just didn't publicize it. I don't know. And Notorious CRG, thank you so much for super chat too. He says every gen has something to hate about new cars: emissions, seatbelt, etc. Now it's batteries, screens, and capacitive buttons. Always something. You're absolutely right. Yep. And even before the emission stuff, I guess you kind of hit that with catalytic converters and yeah, I mean every generation has something they complained about. So it's just, yeah, you're right. That's just the way it goes. And I think there are things. Feedback is actually, valuable and can be important, in certain instances. But, like we've talked about in the past, I think that there's just, especially right now, the very, vocal, at least, group of people that, just don't tell me what to do. I want to, have freedom to choose whatever I want to choose, even if it's the worst possible thing for society or whatever. It's just that is kind of, I think, a little louder than it used to be. That used to be a very much grassroots kind of thing, and now it's, because of social media, become way more prominent. And so I think that's why you have a lot more pushback of people who just don't like these advancements in their cars. And we'll see again, if we have no regulations and no rules for the next few years, we'll see how things play out as far as car regulations goes. It could really, who knows how far backwards it can go. Maybe they'll make seatbelts optional again. Maybe they'll make airbags optional. It's the sky's the limit pretty much. So we'll see. Be interesting. And Chad, thank you for a super chat as well. He says, we have to learn to drive in mountains for a license, but y'all aren't taught to run from gators up there. That's totally unfair. Zigzag, by the way. Interesting. Yeah. I actually, whenever I was on a media drive, what was that for? Oh, for the GMC Acadia. We were in Savannah, Georgia, I think, for that one. I think that's where it was. Yeah, and we stayed at a resort that had gators in the vicinity, and they were like I got to the hotel room, and there was a pamphlet there like, here's what to do if you see a gator. I'm like, oh crap, well that's a first. Never encountered that in a hotel before. And so that was, yeah. I think I remember seeing like one or two, but they were far enough away that I didn't have to like be too terrified. But yeah, it is, yeah, certainly recommended if you're going to Florida or anywhere around there. Yeah, probably should be aware of what to do with the wildlife there. Notorious CRG, thank you for another super chat. He says, one of these days they'll all be normal and have something else to gripe about. Yeah, hopefully. I hope that some of these gripes are just passing complaints and yeah, we'll see what happens. I think a lot of the stuff that really has more teeth to it than it used to. Again, because of social media, and you can form groups of people that agree the same with the same stuff, or can be led to believe the same things a lot easier versus just information traveling slower back in the day. So I think that's why some of these things I think have more weight to them than they used to, and we'll see how that how that plays out for society, depending on how much pushback there is. I mean, we're already seeing it in other areas, and I won't go off topic here. We'll stick to cars, but it's yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things continue to go. And SWE Bavader, thank you so much for a super chat. I see the message was retracted. I'll try and keep an eye out if you have a follow up or something. Oh, you did another super chat. Thanks for that. You didn't have to do another one. By the way, anyone, if you ever need to edit or something, just I will see that you did a super chat. I will look for your question. We've been doing a good job here tonight of answering everybody anyway, but I'll always answer. You don't have to do double if you don't want. But I appreciate the generosity. He says, all my car friends recently just talk about car numbers, 0 to 60 horsepower, etc. Can we bring back the way cars make us feel again and stop getting lost in stats? I agree. I think, yeah, I think there's, part of it is that you see, all of the impressive stats of like the EVs and just all these newest vehicles where it isn't absolutely a bragging rights kind of thing with some of that stuff. I think it also comes down to the group or, just people that you're around with some of this stuff. Cause, I think that especially like certainly like the muscle car groups, stuff like that, it's always been kind of about let's puff up our chest with how much, all the specs and how we can, one up each other with all that stuff. I think, if you're in a Miata club, for example, or even like, I don't know, maybe Porsche's a bad example, but like a Miata club, if you go hang out in a Miata club, I'm sure there's, none of that. And it's about, hey, like, I really, hit that apex perfectly, or I had, a little bit of a, oversteer event, powering out of that one corner or whatever the case is. I'm sure there's more of that. Other groups of cars are, similar, like Mini, like there's the Mini Club, which is a very eccentric group of fun people, it seems, that, just are quirky and just enjoy their cars being quirky and fun too. And I think there's very little ego and that kind of a group, are worrying about, 0 to 60s and horsepower and stuff. I will say that the automotive media is certainly to blame for a lot of that stuff, because we all harp on 0 to 60s and, horsepower and all this stuff. And whenever you're reviewing cars, again, with comparisons being very important, you have to say, okay, well, this has more power, this has less power. Now, in my reviews, I try to, bring some context to that and say, yes, this is slow, but everything else in the segment's slow. Or, yes, this is faster than this other thing, but this handles better, or this still is more fun, even if you're going slower, or, vice versa, whatever the case is. But like, but I think a lot of it's, everyone's just been saying, the crazy magazine times for, the entire time they've been a car person or whatever. And I think there's some of that certainly plays into it. And the car companies certainly play it up as well. They like bragging about all that kind of stuff. I think from a automotive commercial kind of standpoint, though, I think you're going to start to see less of that, because that's something the IHS is really going to start going after. They've already said with like their plans for like the rest of this decade, like the stuff that they're going to focus on for IHS, high scores and stuff. And like one of the things is they want to really get more intentional about limiting speed, which again, going back to the whole seatbelt, debate and stuff from the past, I think that's going to be one of the more controversial things. And we'll say I'm going to probably do a whole little rant about this at some point, so you guys are getting a little unpolished preview of that here. But like, the two things the IHS has said that they're looking to work on next for safety is speed and drunk driving and intoxicated driving. And so there's more and more tech where it can passively check blood, or not blood alcohol level, but your alcohol level from just your breathing. And that's tech that's still kind of, not quite ready for prime time, which is why some of these things they're talking more like 2028, 2029, possibly for some of that stuff. But like they want to cut back on that because again, they're looking at, okay, like how are people dying in cars? The top two things, I think the top two things now, I mean, distracted driving is certainly up there, but like it's most of the time it's the tale as old as time, speed and alcohol. And so those are the two things they're going after next. So I think that one of the more easy things that you can already see in a lot of cars already is speed limit warnings. And like both of our cars already tell you all the time, here's what the speed limit is. And there's a little speed limit sign on the dash, showing you what the speed is for where you're at. So that's going to become mandatory in order to get a top safety pick here in the next year or two, I think. And then they want to start, you start with a warning, and then eventually they actually want to start having speed limiting in cars. And I don't think it'll be exactly the speed limit. And that's going to be controversial because there's people who say, well, what about if I'm in an emergency? And so we'll see how this stuff actually progresses, but like they're really going to start clamping down on that, and they're going to really, I think discourage car companies from bragging about here's your 0 to 60 time. I mean, you'll still be able to do that if you're merging onto a highway or something, but if you don't have that speed limit, it's not going to, these cars eventually are not going to be able to let you just go nuts unless you're at a racetrack or something, I'm assuming. So I think that you're going to see that whole component kind of get downplayed a little bit more. And you're starting to see little baby steps of this too. Like I was even just on Audi's website this weekend, and, like they have like 0 to 60 time listed right there next to the horsepower. But then it always says, always obey all traffic laws, which is also, them just kind of covering their butt. But like there's more and more of this, like, here's what it can do, but drive slow. And it's like kind of a mixed message. They're kind of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's still really fast, but we can't be too excited about it, kind of thing. So I think, that's, sorry, very roundabout answer, but I think you're going to see that stuff, even in the performance world, start to get emphasized a little less. And again, it doesn't matter, about government regulations. This is insurance stuff, Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, not the NHTSA. So if the IHS is doing this, I mean, some companies won't care. I'm sure like Dodge won't care about not getting top safety picks, and they'll, probably, push back on this stuff and, ignore it. And I'm sure some others might as well. But, that's kind of the stuff you're going to start seeing. So, but anyway, I should have just kept to my initial answer of just Miata Club, Mini Club, stuff like that. You won't have that as much. But let me see if there's any follow up here about from him, but I don't see any. So moving on here. So Chad, thank you so much for another super chat. He says whole series called Crash Test Dummies from the 90s. I think I remember that. I don't think I ever saw it, but that rings a bell. I'll have to look into that because I don't remember as much about that. And Notorious CRG, thank you for another super chat. He says, flip side of the coin, many car guys now seem to think that sounds and feel matter more than who crosses the finish line first when racing EVs. That's absolutely right. Yeah, and we've talked about that in the past as well. Yeah, that's certainly true. A lot of the Dodge guys, all the Dodge guys pretty much went from I'm going to be faster than everybody and puffing up their chest to now being, I'm about the experience. I'm a purist, as long as I have my sounds and my gas, I'm happy, and I don't care how slow I'm going. And it's very easy to see through that change because, these are people that are not making a habit out of changing their stance on something like that, especially at the drop of a hat. But whenever it's convenient, that's kind of the move. So absolutely, for drag racers, and a lot of them are excited. Like I think I just saw there was a track around here, one of the drag strips that has now banned EVs for safety reasons. Which, there is, with firefighters and stuff, there's a little bit of extra work, but even like a firefighter commented on because I was reading the Facebook comments, because how that goes sometimes. It's kind of interesting, kind of upsetting, but it's one of those things you can't look away sometimes. But there's a firefighter who's like, yeah, like, I work this kind of stuff. Is like, you have to do a few extra disconnects and know what you're doing, but like, it's still manageable. Some of these batteries do burn for a long time, so that's a different issue. But I think there's a little bit of a safety concern, but I think there's also kind of the motivation of, okay, like everyone's tired of seeing, the plaids and the sapphires and stuff just making everyone look bad, and no one wants to line up next to an EV, I guess. So there's probably some of that too, I'm sure. But yeah, it is funny how people who make it their whole personality to never change their opinion all of a sudden are now people who, well, you know what? I see the other side of it. I want to go slow instead. And Jordan, thank you for another super chat. He says 2026. I'm thinking hybrid is the best buy. Yeah, I think hybrid is certainly going to be the dominating thing here for the next couple of years for sure. Obviously, this is going to be a terrible year for EVs. Because everyone that wanted one already bought them, and now there's no one left to buy until that demand naturally fills back up again, with those repeat customers and other people that just are waiting for better tech or whatever. But yeah, I totally agree, Jordan. And all right, let's see here. Another 25 minutes to go. I'm going to try and get caught up a little bit here. Let me see. So Lantern Tail says the thing about Waymo and Tesla Robotaxi is that it could cheapen the image of the cars that they use in their fleet because no one aspires to own a taxi cab. The Crown Vic is an exception. Yeah, I think there's some of that. I would say the other side of that, though, is that, it hasn't stopped anyone from buying a Tesla. That's for sure. I mean, you see tons of people, obviously, buying those, even though, people are riding them all the time already. Even before the Robotaxi days, just half the Ubers use them because, again, EVs are cheaper to run and really good for, lots of driving and high miles and durability and reliability and all that stuff. But, so I think, in some cases, I think that some of that has kind of gone by the wayside because honestly, like I also think I actually wonder sometimes, I'm like, why do people buy white and black Explorers? I'm like, surely everyone's always terrified you're a cop. Like you would always have everyone doing the speed limit in front of you, or at least people who are, situationally aware, doing the speed limit in front, like, and being freaked out around you and stuff. I don't know. Just like, but they still sell a ton of white and black Explorers. And same thing, it probably could go for Durangos for that. I mean, black Durangos, I think a little less, especially because every black Durango I think on planet Earth has limo tint and a loud exhaust. But I think yeah, there's some of those things where I would think it would discourage people, and it actually doesn't. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see how that plays out for I mean, the I-Pace, I guess, doesn't matter. And yeah, it doesn't seem to be hurting Tesla any either, in my opinion. And let me see here. Also, so Jordan saying, sorry, I keep like scratching my nose. I have like it feels like I got a cat hair or something on, but it's just, and it's always being tickled. Anyway, Jordan, thank you for a super chat. He says affordable China EVs now Canadian approved at the threshold of the U.S. Should Toyota reintroduce the Prius with a dramatically reduced price point? So do you mean like a Prius C or like a different variant of the Prius? I mean, because obviously we currently have the Prius, and I think people who want a cheaper Prius, you can get a Corolla hybrid, which is kind of the same thing. I don't think I think they're different buyers. I think if you're at the point of getting an EV, especially used, they're already cheap enough. That's been a common narrative of electric cars are too expensive. And sure, if we were talking a couple years ago when they were marked up and very desirable, yes, there was certainly an affordability problem back then. But I still think there were some exceptions. Leaf was always cheap, Bolt was always cheap. But nowadays, I mean, you can get any of these things. I mean, our Mach-E, it's sold for 28 grand, or it was listed at 28 grand. It probably went for even less. 28 grand for a 15 or 20,000 mile electric vehicle from 2022. That's got all the luxuries. I mean. I don't see there being, if you're okay with used, there's no affordability problem. There's a dirt cheap EV for basically any budget from 15 grand and up. I can point you in the direction of something that's still pretty solid, still has lots of life left in it. That's, it's not hard to find. So I mean, to me, that's not really a concern. It's just, the new car financing is certainly appealing, and for some people, that's one of the nice perks. But other than that, I mean, I think the appeal is that the Chinese EV stuff can be you know, really top-notch modern tech and come in at those prices. But again, I don't think anyone can really match them. I think Ford's going to probably get the closest. It sounds like their new, universal EV platform seems like it's gotten close to the cost level of the Chinese. So according to Jim Farley, at least this week. We'll see, again, if he's like right now, he said they're focused on landing the plane. So there's still a chance this whole thing kind of blows up and doesn't work. But hopefully, they do get there. But it's going to be tough, I'm sure. It's really aggressive cost cutting and trying to do these gigacasting things and reverse engineer Teslas to try and, kind of match that kind of efficiency at least, and then make it even better with the Chinese stuff, So we'll see. And Notorious, thank you so much for that super chat. He says, seen the 01X video? I didn't. I mean, I saw that, yeah, it did the drag time. Yeah, 8.7 quarter mile, 0 to 60 in 1.7. Street tires and pump gas, amazing. Sure, it's a prep track, but Demon requires more preparation. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, what did Demon do? I don't even remember what Demon did. I mean, was it in the 9s even? But yeah, I mean, it's impressive what the 01X will do. I mean, it embarrasses basically everything, the Bugattis, all that kind of stuff. And it's really cool. I think the Corvette team does some pretty amazing stuff, and it's great to see, for sure. And let me see. Chad, thank you for a super chat. He says, speed has never killed anyone. Suddenly becoming stationary, that's what gets you. Yes, the famous Jeremy Clarkson quote. You're correct. And Notorious, thank you for another super chat as well. I guess it just came through twice. I apologize if YouTube screwed up on that for you. Hopefully it didn't charge you twice if you only meant to do it once. But let me see. Yeah, and where were we here? So I appreciate all the super chats tonight. It's fun because it kind of keeps things, with the conversation going a little bit quicker versus me being 20 or 30 minutes behind on comments here. But let me see. I don't think we're too far behind though. So Nico says the job market sucks. Get it together, America. We just mirror your economy. I know. I apologize on behalf of America to you and for every Canadian out there that we are, and I mean a whole bunch of other people in the world that we're pissing off right now. Yeah, it's I'm sure it's not great in Canada, and sounds like it's not going to get any better anytime soon. I mean, the Chinese EVs will certainly be a little bit of a relief, I guess, and if they do invest more in factories and stuff, that'll be great for you guys. But obviously, that takes time, unless they buy the old American factories. But yeah. And also Nico's got to fly by the EVs in his Mustang. Just don't line up in a light against them. If you haven't found that out, that's usually not going to be a recipe for success if you're not in an all-wheel drive electric vehicle. But Hamburger says, did you see Scotty Kilmer finally bought a car? It's a new Camry hybrid. I didn't see that. I don't follow him. I make it a point to not follow him. But no surprise there. They got a Camry hybrid. I mean, that guy's raking in the cash, though. I'm surprised he's not at least going for the Lexus equivalent. Because, man, that knowing how much YouTube pays and seeing his view counts, yeah. I'm honestly surprised he hasn't just retired at this point, because he's not a spring chicken, and he's certainly, unless he really mismanages his money, he definitely has enough to retire off of at this point. So I don't know, but hey. I guess congrats on the new car for him, and but yeah, he spreads a good amount of misinformation in my opinion, so I'm not a fan of his, I will say. Lantern Tail says, between the Tempo, Beth's Fiesta, and your Mustang mishaps, your luck with Ford is not great. That is true, although the Mach-E was fantastic, and I think maybe that's one of the things that I'm spoiled with as a reviewer, is I see and I get to experience for an entire week every model typically in a lineup, and I can kind of get a fuller picture instead of just one isolated incident in my one car or whatever. Because I mean, all the other, I mean, that one Mustang was cursed, but like the EcoBoost, I mean, there's a little bit of weirdness with the EcoBoost. Some of that stuff might have been caused by the mods, some of it might not have been, but like EcoBoost was probably fine. I don't know, but the GT was just cursed. That car was a great car otherwise, aside from just being an accident magnet. And again, the AC going out on the other one is a normal thing for those, and one of the few issues with S550s. So I don't really hold it against it. That also was covered under warranty, I believe. So I don't think that was something I had to pay for. I don't think I paid for that. Because I think it would have probably made more of a stink if I did have to actually cough up the money to do it. Because it was like, I think it was $650 or something for them to tear out the dash and do that. And this was again pre-inflation times. But then the Bullet was flawless. I mean, I got a couple of flat tires in the Bullet. But other than that, I mean, it was flawless. And the Mach-E was completely issue-free, aside from the brake rotors, having the groove. But again, that's just design flaw, nothing that left me stranded. And I guess maybe that's just because of my experiences. Like, if I make it to my destination, I can live with most of the other stuff. Like for me, it's just like stranding is like the cardinal sin that, you leave me stranded like the Mini did. I mean, so that's actually, I guess I completely missed the whole Mini thing as far as going back through my mishaps. I mean, that wasn't accidents, but like that Mini, you guys saw it. You can search if you haven't seen it. Just search "bad day for the Mini" on my channel, and you'll see me standing outside of the car with the hood popped and steam pouring out because the thermostat failed on the Mini, because they're plastic thermostats that are made from very brittle plastic, it seems. And then the water pump failed, so that Mini was a terrible experience. And that's why I got rid of it. But so I mean, that left me stranded, and almost left me stranded twice, because the water pump was something that was, I was able to limp it home. But between those two things, it was that's why I got rid of it so quick. And I was like, I gotta get into something. I can't, especially once the clutch started slipping, which I was like, all right, well, I'm not paying $3,000 for a clutch for this car that I only spent like 12 and a half on or something. So that's really, if a car leaves me stranded, I lose all faith in it. And then from that point, it's like, I can't get out of this thing fast enough. I think that's really my trigger for sure. Let me see. Lantern Tail says, I've seen a late 80s Camry recently. It's not that much smaller than a new Corolla. The doors look paper thin, which is not great. Yeah, all that old stuff, certainly not great compared to everything modern these days with safety stuff. And Lantern Tail says, if you got hit by literally anything now, the car would snap like a pencil. Right. Absolutely. Yeah, which is one of the things that does detract from enjoying older cars these days, is just not a lot of great stuff. Even whenever, I mean, like, they fixed some of the stuff, like it was really bad with some of the classics, which is really one of my conflicted things, because you guys know how much I love, and I'm obsessed over safety, but then like I love classic cars too. But like, man, the stuff from like the 40s and the 50s, it's real bad. You also have bad brakes, so it's hard to avoid stuff. But man, I mean, yeah, they're just not great. I won't get into all the gruesome details if you're not aware of all the ways classic cars can not have a fun time in an accident. But anyway, it's it's one of the hard things, for those old cars. You really have to have a high risk tolerance and not be bothered by that stuff. And Nico says he throws up every time he sees a microwave on wheels drive by. Guessing you mean the Cybertrucks, or maybe just EVs in general. And Chad says older Saturns, you could feel the wind come through the door gaps. Interesting. I never experienced that. My uncle did have one of the old, one of the SL series, whatever the small, like, compact one was, the 4-door one. He had one of those. I think I rode it a few times. I don't recall that, but maybe I just don't remember because it was so long ago. And OKS Bassist, also known as I'm Not Paying $42,000 for a Prelude, says, here's an idea: immobilizer in the seatbelt that prevents the car from starting until buckled in. It, if taken off while in motion, Rebecca Black's Friday plays at full volume. That's a fun idea. Yeah, I mean, Chevy has that actually built in, not the Friday part, but they have, it's actually part of the programming for the teen driver stuff that you can have in those where it's just, you can turn those things on and off with the master key or whatever. But one of the things is will not start until you buckle, which especially for teen drivers or anyone who struggles with that is really, a nice thing to have. Because yeah, I mean, it's still crazy even here in 2026, when you look at the crash data, I think it's like almost half of all fatalities are still people that are not wearing seatbelts, which I guess kind of calms everyone's nerves as far as car safety and stuff, because you see these, increasing fatality rates, but it's like really you have to half that number because, anyone who's using their brain and wearing a seatbelt, you wouldn't be one of those people in a normal circumstances, just, the seatbelt thing. And yeah, it's tragic. Actually, there was someone in the Cars and Coffee group who was into cars, really nice guy, and that's actually what did him in, unfortunately. Going way back, I don't know if I ever talked about this. He was actually the person. If you watch the video of me installing the exhaust on the BRZ, it was me and him. He was helping me put it on, and he was a huge help in those early days with modding stuff, and he was we kind of lost touch later on down the road, but he was a good friend there for a while. And yeah, he was in a delivery truck that he was driving for his job, and he had just stopped for gas or something and hopped back in the car and was driving, and I think he was doing a little bit of like road ragey or something, because it seems like he went to like change lanes too fast and clipped a car that was in his blind spot, and it set him headfirst into a bridge support kind of pillar thing, and no seatbelt. And so it's tragic. Left behind a wife and a kid, but like, it's, yeah, if anyone has any debate or if it's not something you do on a regular basis, please always buckle up. It's the easiest thing you can do, and it drastically improves your safety. And regardless of what you're in, you could be in the biggest death trap, but if you're wearing a seatbelt, like, that can really help big time. Anyway, let me see here. So Lantern Tail says, with the automatic power seatbelts, if the power goes out, you're locked in with no means of escape. But with Waymos, some people don't close the door. So if people get so lazy to the point where they don't close doors anymore, automatic seatbelts might come back. That's true. So with the automatic power seatbelts, I mean, at least the Tempo had a manual disconnect. So there was a little like a squeeze clip kind of thing you would press, and you could just disconnect it that way, which also was very easy for people to just be like, oh, I'm not going to have the car force me to buckle up, and they would just have that part come undone, and then you have this little thing that goes up and down that's detached from anything. So I certainly know there's people who did that, but yeah, I think it saves lives, even if some people don't enjoy it, I guess. But Arjun says, what do you think of the $369 a month WRX premium lease with 0 down? I hadn't heard about that, I don't think. I know in the past they did leases for that kind of money, but they did have money down. So if they're now sign and drive $369 a month, wow, that certainly makes the price tag better. Yeah, I didn't realize that they were leasing that well right now. Maybe they're just, again, trying to combat the low sales of last year. At $369 a month, WRX is a solid buy. I would absolutely endorse that, because yeah, you're getting a 40-ish grand car for $369 a month. That's pretty good, especially for gas and these days. That's awesome. I didn't know about that. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. And Sarkinsov says, hey, Matt, do you ever think new car prices will become more affordable again in the near future? I don't see it happening anytime soon, unfortunately. Not in the near future. I just don't see it happening, between tariffs. I mean, that's going to make it hard to, drop pricing on anything. And even if we did have like deflation, which is something that's been brought up, which is not something you want. It sounds good on the surface to be like, hey, yeah, let's go backwards and deflate these prices. But that has a lot of very bad domino effects that that really kind of usually send economies into a recession or a depression. So you usually don't want any deflation, but so I just don't see. Yeah, the only way it would happen is with the Chinese EVs, and but that would just make them cheaper. Like, because this is the thing about the all the brands that are already here. Sure, everyone's got different profit margins, and some are better than others, and some can afford to discount stuff more than others. Um, but and this is also something to keep on your radar, because this is something that I think not is like really nobody's talking about. But the tariff stuff that we saw last year that is still in effect, even like a lot of these car companies will tell you, like a 15% tariff is still a significant chunk of change. Like that's a big pill to swallow still. And so like Hyundai, for example, didn't really raise prices last year. A few others didn't really raise prices. Subaru kind of did right up front, right off the bat, and took the heat immediately. And I think Subaru might have the last laugh, or at least they'll kind of be on even ground with people here this year, because it sounds like other car companies may actually raise prices and finally reflect tariffs this year, and be like, look, if we thought this was going to be like a temporary thing for a few months, we can weather that. If this is something we thought was maybe going to last, until these trade deals got set, and then they were going to go away or be drastically reduced, then okay, we can deal with it. But like if this is the new normal and it's not going away, at least until 2029 or something, then these companies can't afford to absorb that forever. They will pass costs on. So you haven't seen the last of tariff price increases, which I guess I'm sure the car companies might even get some blame, which I think is part of why, as much as Subaru got crap for it last year, it was like, okay, we're hearing about tariffs 24/7, and now this price has gone up as a result. And no one questions the car companies. It's just like, well, it's tariffs. But now if we start seeing giant price jumps this year, then that's going to cause people to, maybe be like, oh, well, the tariff thing was last year. Why are you raising your prices this year? And there's going to be a disconnect there that I think is going to make people, at least some people, blame car companies wrongly for that. So I think that you will see, actually this year, you might see even more aggressive price increases than typical for some brands. Again, everyone's going to have a different strategy of, how long do they take this on the chin? How long do they absorb this stuff? How much can they afford to? How much, is it worthwhile, strategy wise? But I think that you're going to see more of that, probably beyond even the car sector, but especially the car sector. That stuff's going to start, I think, ramping up even more. So, especially with now, all of these cars are being really heavily incentivized with, interest rates and stuff. Probably a pretty good time to buy a car right now, especially if you're, if you miss the boat on EVs, or if you're, only interested in gas stuff. I think it's probably a pretty good time to buy right now. Winter time's always a little slower too, so that helps. But yeah, I don't think it's gonna get any better. If the Chinese magically get let in, that'll bring affordable cars from them, but that's all you're gonna get. I don't think that everyone else just can't lower their prices, especially with tariffs and everything else. It's just not gonna happen. The margins are just not there for most of these car companies. And this is why, like, Dodge has even said, like, we'll never get back to a sub $40,000 truck as far as MSRP goes. He's like, it's just that there's no possible way to do it, from as far as how much it costs to build them, how much it costs to source the parts, all the stuff that's required. And the stuff that you need to have just to be competitive, there's no way to get there. It's just like, no matter how badly they want to do it. He's like, I'd love, Tim Kuniskis said, I think last year, he's like, I'd love to do a cheap truck. We can't do it. Like, it's just, there's no way to do a full size truck for that cheap anymore, so there's just some of those things that just, and also it's also the genie in the bottle thing. Like, once the genie's out of the bottle, like, going backwards is going to be almost impossible, so I think the best you could hope for is for prices to hold steady, but I think even that, again, is kind of a pipe dream, honestly, unfortunately, for this year. Let me see. Lantern Tail says, for the general public, 0 to 60 matters. That's what sells cars. Once we have more variety of performance cars, the feeling of the cars will become more of a selling point. Yeah, I mean, I think there's plenty of variety already, though. I think it's just that, yeah, and I think it's just that the 0 to 60s are also going to be less relevant once everything's super fast. all these EVs are already plenty fast enough. Nobody cares if it's, the average buyer does not care if their Lucid Gravity has a 3.5 seconds 0 to 60 or a 4.5 seconds 0 to 60. They don't care. They're not going to really. I mean, they'll probably notice it if they go full throttle, but I mean, they're never going to have to go full throttle because they have so much power on tap already anyway. So I think that, yeah, we've kind of reached peak horsepower. It's like we've reached peak screen where it's like you don't need more. There's no reason to have more. Anything more is honestly dangerous and not for public consumption. The average person should not have, 1,000 horsepower under their right foot. It's just not. You don't want that. Is if anyone has seen the caliber of drivers we have here in America, you do not want them having a fast car. Trust me. So, I think that it's, yeah, this is why we're seeing, I think even like Tesla, honestly, they haven't really pursued, giant advancements. Once you hit 3.5 seconds for a Model 3 performance, you don't really need more. You're good, and so I think that's why some of them have kind of cooled off with that a little bit. And Chad says for electric cars, numbers don't matter. Yeah, so you're right there with me, Chad. There's a reason why Kona gets studied. I don't know what you mean by that, but yeah. So where were we? So Chad also says, I saw the first new gen chargers, one gray one beautiful blue. They were both gas and really good looking. I think they look better in person. I think they do too. Yeah. I mean, I know I just had the Charger 6-pack last week for a week, and it turned some heads. I mean, driving by people like actually like doing the whole turn and turning their head all the way and checking out the back end and everything else too. I mean, it turns. I mean, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, or whether it's people that are thinking it's hideous or good looking, I don't know. But like, it gets people looking. That's for sure. And I mean, just the proportions alone. It's wide. It's still pretty long and fairly low. And it's a big car though. I mean, it kind of gets your attention for that alone. And Linda says, greetings. I finally made it. Love these chats. Wish we lived close enough that we could meet for happy hour. I agree. That would be really fun, Linda. And yeah, maybe someday we can do something like that. There is a company that reached out to me a couple of months ago that does like curated trips with a YouTuber where it's like for our thing, for example, it's kind of like what I think Road and Track does, like Matt Fair is involved with these, and Everyday Driver, I think Hooked on Driving, I think they do kind of a similar thing, although theirs involves the track component. But like the idea of like, hey, let's all do a road trip together, and you get a group of you, and it's all curated and all that kind of stuff. A lot of the car companies are doing this too, like Ferrari and Aston Martin. All these companies are kind of doing those kinds of things too. I mean, it's expensive, but maybe someday it'd be kind of fun to do something like that, of just like, hey, everyone, like, obviously, again, it's not cheap, and you're getting your car there is a pain and stuff, so it's a whole thing. So it wouldn't be super inclusive, I guess, but it'd be fun to kind of have something like that someday where we all do, I don't know, Route 66, or I don't know, go through the hills of San Francisco and retrace the Bullet route, or I don't know, just various things to do would be kind of fun. So maybe someday it'll be something like that, but yeah, it'd be fun to even do a happy hour sometime. And let me see. Nico says after upgrades and tire upgrades, his 0 to 60 on his Mustang is now 3.7. Nice. That's pretty solid for S550. It's awesome. And Linda also says, during my high school years, aka the 1960s, the message was speed kills and the stopping distance at certain speeds. Yeah, and stopping distance is something that doesn't get enough attention, especially these days with tailgaters. And I mean, admittedly, we have much better tires and brakes, but I mean, that still, is a very important component of. I think that also that's something that should be brought up more in schools now, because I think you have a good point there, Linda, with the stopping distance of like, not only does that just reinforce like, don't tailgate and stuff, but like, I think whenever you get people to understand the physics of the speed and, not only for stopping distance purposes, but also like if you bump into something, or if you're, and just like the mass and how long it takes to slow that mass down. And I think just the bottom line is like, if people understood physics, I think, and just knew weight transfer, like other stuff, whatever, that's kind of wish list stuff. But if people just understood weight transfer in their cars, I mean, I think that alone would drastically reduce the amount of accidents. Just because people just don't understand, okay, this throttle input means I have less, steering capability. I'm not helping my understeer problem right now as I'm getting into a ditch or whatever, all these various things. And if you understand how to transfer the weight, you can really save your butt in a lot of instances. I mean, there's been times in the past for me, even where I've, especially in my earlier days before I had more skilled driving, but I, still understood the basics of like, okay, well, here's how I fight understeer, here's how I fight oversteer, here's how I compensate for this. Even just telling people like you steer in the direction of where you're trying to go. When you're in a slide, like that's one of the first things they tell you in high performance driving school, and that alone could save so many people instead of them just wildly spinning or it's one of these things. If you're steering into the thing you're trying to avoid, like you're going to go where your eyes are going. You got to keep your eyes to where you're wanting to go, not where you are going. And so if you're sliding this way and you're like, oh no, then you're naturally gonna go this way, even if you don't want to in that split second, because you're looking towards the slide instead of like, if I'm sliding this way, my eyes are forward. I'm okay. Well, I'm sliding. This is back here doing this stuff, but I'm trying to go this way. And like that, even just that mental focus, the rest of your reflexes kind of follow that naturally, especially again, once you've had that experience and that training. This is why, like I mentioned in prior live streams, if you're someone who's new to driving in snow or something like that, go to a deserted parking lot, see what your car does whenever you're sliding and you're in these kind of situations. It can absolutely save your butt someday, anyway, so I see, actually, I just noticed we're 5 minutes over time already. So we'll try and the last few here, and we'll head on out. Let me see. Nico says, if I wanted to go to the speed limit, I would have bought a GR Corolla. Boo. Raphael says, the sound was always the most important for me. I don't do 0 to 60 or top speed or quarter mile runs, but I love high revving. Yeah, and sound is certainly fine. I mean, I've always been an evangelist for that myself. That was, from the BRZ days. That was the whole thing. I mean, I can't tell you, if I had $1 for every, snarky comment about how slow my BRZ was, and me saying it's not about going fast in a straight line, it's about the drive and, the handling and the experience. I mean, between the years of 2012 and I got rid of that in 2014, and those 2 years, the amount of replies or just stuff I didn't even reply to, but just the amount of comments about that crap that I got. I mean, oh yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you. And Nico also says, oh God, Chinese EVs, I can see the tow truck drivers rubbing their hands. I mean, maybe, a long time ago that would have been the case, but they seem to be really well built. And EVs in general have less to go wrong, simple motors and stuff. So I don't know. I haven't seen any reliability reports. The stuff that I've seen, it seems like they're pretty robust these days. And that's kind of an outdated trope that, Chinese built means crap. I mean, every one of my iPhones has been built in China and they're all really well built. It just comes down to, again, the budget of these things. Obviously, you go for the cheapest thing possible, you're going to get garbage. Same goes on Amazon or whatever else you're buying. If you go for the cheapest Chinese crap, yeah, it'll be garbage. If you pay for well-built stuff, from China, high-end TVs, whatever, I mean, that stuff can be very well made, just, again, comes down to it's not even the labor in it, it's just the parts and the components. And if you're using quality components, you're going to have less issues. But Lantern Tail says, at what point will these insane 0 to 60 times be too dangerous? 90% of people can't even handle a crossover without crashing or doing something stupid. I think that's also going to be a conversation, obviously not for this administration, but I think that, in the 2030s, again, once EVs become more and more common and these really fast accelerations are much, probably more accessible. And I mean, they're already really accessible with dirt cheap Teslas, but I think as that becomes more and more common, I think that is a conversation that'll be had once again we're not on the brink of disaster in a variety of different ways and chaos and civil war and world war and everything else. But once hopefully someday we're in calmer times. I think that's one of the things that needs to be kind of talked about is, you know, what do we do here to make sure that this stuff stays safe? I think the bottom line is that, you know, the approach is going to be technology. You know, like I said, we have the speed limiters, we have all this other stuff, and you have, you know, the lane keep assist, you have automatic braking, you have automatic steering, and it's basically just going to baby step you into the autonomous car. I think that's going to be the solution, more so than, okay, let's dial back power, or let's, you know, give people better training, you know, all the the things that would be more, you know, fixing the root of the problem. Instead, it'll just be, no, like the computers will save us, and that'll be it, you know. And um Notorious says it came through twice with his. So yeah, if it was twice with the super chat there, Notorious, definitely, if you want to get your money back for one, you can complain to YouTube if it's a glitch. I don't have any control over that stuff, but I believe there is certainly a way for you to complain to YouTube. I think, unless, I mean, there's a little drop down here. Let me see if there's a way to. No, there's no option for me to refund you. I would totally do it myself if I could, but I think you have to go through YouTube for that. But absolutely, do that if that's something you weren't intending to do, a double super chat there. So sorry about that. And YouTube strikes again. At least hopefully the comment thing's been okay tonight for regular comments. I know for others last time that still was a little bit of a problem. But let me see. Nico says, thinking of moving to Greenland to escape the American eagle. Might not be the best place to go if you're trying to escape us. Yeah. I think you're yeah. Well, anyway, I won't go down that tangent because we're out of time, and it's off the rails anyway. So, yeah, best of luck though if you decide to flee from the American problems here. And Notorious says, I have no idea why Scotty Kilmer has a subscriber in View County has. I mean, I have my hypotheses. I think though a lot of it is just there's a lot of people that relates to him and his rants, and you know, just I think it's a very different viewer base than, you know, everyone in here, for example. But don't underestimate, you know, the large amount of, you know, angry, grumpy people that, you know, will accept any BS reason to hate a brand or hate a car, and will not fact check, will not actually make sure they're getting the truth, and will just, you know, go off the deep end right with him, and you know, and take it as gospel. So yeah, I think that's I think there's certainly more to unpack there, but we'll leave it at that for now. But and I see Levader says he wants more car stats. Well, I mean, the magazines are great about giving you a lot of that stuff with the test data they do oftentimes. And Sarkanoff says, I remember the video of your Mini leaving you stranded 10-ish years ago. Before the Mini, you had the BRZ. Then after the Mini, I remember you getting the EcoBoost. I can't believe it was 10 years ago. Yeah. Even the EcoBoost at this point was almost 11 and a half years ago. I even got that. It's because that was fall of 2014. So it's been, yeah, time flies, you know. And Nico also says Ford stands for sell before 65,000 miles. I mean, probably not a terrible idea for some of them. I think the Coyote, though, absolutely, they've been shown to, you know, go 200,000 miles with good maintenance, no problem. Probably beyond that even. And Lantern Tail says, which one is more unreliable, the Tempo or the Mini? You could buy a Tempo for very cheap. You could make good content. That is an interesting idea. If it wasn't so unsafe, I'd probably be up for that. But yeah, no, I don't think I want to revisit the Tempo. It would make for good content. I think though, if I'm going to have a disaster of a car, I want it to be something I actually enjoy, like a very old Aston Martin with a V12 that'll probably, you know, also equally leave me stranded and headache filled as much. But it'd be a lot cooler than a Tempo. So I think if I'm going to do an unreliable project car, it's going to probably be an old Aston or something like that, probably, which I'll never do because I don't want to deal with that kind of stuff. And I think hopefully the rants will be the way forward here, along with the reviews. But Ricardo says, been a huge fan from the Super Dukes fan days. Thank you for being you and one of the best YouTubers out there. Well, thank you so much, Ricardo. I really appreciate that. And thanks for following along all these years. It really means a lot. And there's so many in here that have been along for this very, very long ride. And I'm so thankful that all you guys have enjoyed it, and hope you continue to enjoy it. And I really, again, always appreciate your support, because every single one of those views, especially these days, it matters. It really, it's more important now than ever. So thank you so much for that support. And let me see. All right, we're getting close to the end here. So Notorious, thank you again for another super chat. He says, Dual 01X super chats. I want my $5 back, Matt. Absolutely. Like I said, definitely complain to YouTube for sure. I hope, and let me know too. You can send me an email if they are giving you an issue. I can reach out to my end of YouTube to like flag that and bring attention to that. But I think you have to initiate that first. And so hopefully you can, hopefully they actually handle that well. If not, they'll please email me, because I don't ever want anyone to feel ripped off by YouTube or by me for sure. So definitely let me know if that doesn't work out. As far as the no idea why Kilmer has that subscriber and view count, he's lame and the Prelude's better in person. I haven't seen a actually, have I seen a Prelude in person? I'm trying to think if I saw one at one of the auto shows or not. I don't think I have, honestly. I don't know if it was at New York last year. I don't think it was. Anyway, yeah, we'll see. I'm curious if they send me one to review. I'll request one, and you guys will obviously see whether or not I ever get one. And Linda says she really misses her old cars, like the Chevy Bel Air, Mustang 2, Caravan, and 2000 Avalon. I bet some cool cars in there. And Notorious says, yeah, cars will never get any cheaper than they are now, not appreciably. Yeah, I agree. And Sarkanaw says, Sarkansov says, speaking of the Arjun's comment about the awesome lease deal on the WRX, last month and this month until February 2nd, they're offering 0% interest up to 72 months. I wish they had that when I got the TS. Yeah, a lot of different brands are doing 0% for 72 months, I've been seeing. So yeah, if you want to buy something, this is definitely, I haven't seen this kind of subsidized rate since, I don't think I've ever seen this in the 2020s, honestly. Maybe in that very narrow window when they were like desperate to sell cars in the early COVID days, before the supply chain stuff made everything super rare. But yeah, very good deals as far as financing right now, for sure. It's not like the interest rate really dropped that much. It's just car companies are finding out that that's an effective way to get people to buy cars right now. And Chad says, thanks again for doing these chats. Love these updates and shorts. And thanks so much for stopping by. We'll get to the last few questions here and super chats here, and we will head on out. So New Wave says, the Japan trade deal even affects the 25-plus-year-old used imports. Dealing with that now, importing my 2000 Toyota Crown Estate 2JZ. That's awesome. You're importing one. Sorry to hear about the tariff struggle. So 15% tariff plus 2.5 tariff. That has been around for decades equals 17.5 total. Wow. So that, definitely makes the price even higher. Even worse is if you're importing a truck or van that qualifies for chicken tax status. That's 25% plus 15, so 40%. Real tough there. So wait, so I thought chicken tax was only on OEMs doing new stuff, but is it? So all these K trucks that are coming in, are they paying the chicken tax, the 40%? That's crappy if that's the case. That sucks, man. Well, kudos to you for still doing it. But yeah, it's tariffs suck. I'm not into it. So sorry you have to deal with that. And Martin says, what do you think about the automatic transmission in the K4 and how Kia ditched the DCT that it shares with other vehicles? In the so you can watch the review of the K4 that I did. It's kind of slow with the way that it's programmed in the K4. It kind of actually dulls the experience over the CV. Well, you got a regular CVT in the old Forte and the Launcher, but the N-Line did the DCT, and that's certainly, the DCT is pretty decent in those. So I actually prefer the DCT, honestly. Maybe long-term, the 8-speed would be better, but I think from a drivability standpoint, I like the DCT better, actually. But I see Jordan. Thank you for a super chat. He says U.S. ideology is a new car and home owner. Is a new car and homeowner a productive adult or just an advanced cog in the wheel? No room for used buyers. So, I mean, I think the whole appeal of new is just that you're saving money on interest. This is kind of, I think, the main draw, in addition to the other perks of, oh, I got a new car and new car smell and 0 miles and all that stuff. But I think it's just, it is still like the dream, like, because homes are still one of the best ways to build wealth for yourself, with building equity. Because land is always good to own and houses always appreciate, and that kind of stuff. So I think it's genuinely, like, it's still very much appealing, and that's why people want both of those things. It's just that, again, those things are just more out of reach than ever before because wages haven't kept up. It's just that simple. And that just goes back to the corporate greed problem that we've had for a long time, and it's just kind of getting worse than ever in many ways. With just CEOs making a much higher multiple over their lowest paid employee than they ever did in the past, that kind of stuff. Anyway, Chad, thank you for super chat. He says Kia EV getting studied for fun factor, not Kona. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I know what you're talking about. So it's the Hyundai, the Ioniq 5N that's getting studied for its, fun factor. And that's the thing that, Porsche is now seeming like they're going to copy, Lamborghini going to copy. And I think that's absolutely the right way forward. So I'm so glad that everyone's latched on to Ioniq 5N, because that was literally my car of the year in 2024. And that is so encouraging for the future of fun EVs, in my opinion, if that's the way they go. And that's what I'm really excited for, is to see how Porsche does that, how Lamborghini does that. If they have all their historical sounds available to use, and different gear ratios you could even swap on the fly. I mean, there's so many possibilities there. It's basically like real-time Forza or Gran Turismo. You can, like, real-time engine swap, real-time transmission swap. It could be infinitely cool, in my opinion. And again, for some people, especially, if you're not from the video game era, the idea of having your EV become like a virtual video game kind of car, might not sound very fun, but I don't know, for some of us that maybe grew up with that stuff, like, that sounds amazing to me. One day I feel like having my Porsche Macan sound like a GT3, and another day I'm like, maybe I want to have it sound like a classic Porsche. This could be fun. But anyway, and let me see. Linda says a road trip would be fun. Maybe someday it'll happen. We'll see. If that kind of stuff gets more and more popular, and people have more money to spend on that kind of stuff. And Lantern Tail says, my Hyundai Venue is 6 years old, 4 years left on the warranty. By 2030, hopefully there will be a good choice of EV sports cars. I hope so. Yeah, I think there will be. I will see. It might be slower, but I think certainly in the 2030s we'll see a bunch. And Mr. 705 says, I think we need a night to discuss your time travel theories and other conspiracy theories. Oh, that would be fun. I maybe that one. You're not a member. That something like that. I feel like having it not be completely public. I mean, it's not like I don't know how that would go over as far as like general audience stuff, people who are just interested in just cars, but could be fun. I mean, I have no complaints, going off on all my, theories and stuff, but yeah, we'll have to think. I have to think about a way that I can maybe do that. I'm not opposed, but maybe I just, one of these times, if I have enough Giacola drinks, maybe I'll just start rambling. I don't know, but there's I got all kinds of opinions. Maybe sometime. And Jordan says the big three should definitely go hybrid. Toyota is king since forever. Subaru already tapped Toyota. No, US is tapping, or now US is tapping Lucid or Tesla. Ford should partner with Toyota, bring back the Ford Focus EV. I think that it seems like Chevy's slowly going to be going hybrid. They're talking about doing, plug-in hybrid, I think, for Equinox here, which is already available in China, but slowly bringing that here. And I think that, just doing Yeah, I think there could be way more cooperation with that stuff for sure. I mean, and Mazda was smart about this. Mazda absolutely is, I think, one of the good examples of this, where like Mazda in China has, their partnerships with the local Chinese car companies, and there's electric Mazdas that are very, competitive in China, and then here in the States, they knew the hybrid thing was, really hot, and so instead of waiting for their system to come online with the CX-5 next year, they said, okay, let's just take the Toyota stuff and throw it into a CX-50. And I think that's part of the real appeal for CX-50 right now is that hybrid version with its really good fuel economy. So I think more of those collaborations should be embraced, especially if you want to hit these things while they're hot. That's the way to do it. And Lantern Tail says the Matt Morants have been doing well view-wise. They have, and I'm very thankful for that. Thank you to all of you who watched those. I'll be just at the mercy of the news and the topics that I have available to me. So we'll see, how consistent I'm able to be with those and just how many I'm actually able to churn out every month. Yeah, they're super easy to make. I can turn one of those things around in like an hour. And if I can, do more of those and, maybe make the car reviews a little bit more of like a once a week thing instead of twice or 3 times a week, I think that could be very nice. So we'll see how things progress, but I'm optimistic for them, and it's been really nice to see improved views on the channel, and I hope that continues for sure, because that's what keeps me around. And if I can keep those views up, then I stick around and I keep being able to hang out with you guys and have this fun and amazing career that I've had and been spoiled with now for 10.5 years, and we'll see where it goes from here. But Nightbreaker, thank you so much for a super chat here. He says, hi, Matt. Before you go, 2026 is the year I will search for my dream car, GTI or Elantra N. Which shall I choose? My next car I intend not to trade in. I mean, both are great. I think, long-term, Elantra N obviously gives you that 10-year warranty, especially if you're buying new. So I think that's probably the better one from a warranty coverage standpoint. I also think Elantra N to me is more fun. It has more character. There's crackles and pops from the exhaust. You have a little bit more variation in the adaptive dampers, in my opinion. And you even have a bunch of different sounds to pick from. You can have it sound like the TCR race car. There's a few different to pick. I think there's 4 different sounds actually. So that kind of stuff's kind of fun to supplement, the actual exhaust notes. And there's just, it's a really fun car. Now it's a little more extroverted, of course. And, it's not for everyone. GTI is a really solid car too. I think that motor is pretty solid. So even though you don't have warranty coverage for a super long period, there's normal things. I think that Volkswagen motor always has the water pump. That's its one weak Achilles heel. So I would, just plan that there. You might have a couple of fixes you need to do long-term on a GTI, but I don't think those things should, dissuade you from what is otherwise a really fun, great car. Again, as long as, you know what you're getting into going into it, I think it's not a deal breaker for me anymore. Previously, there was better options like, Civic Si and stuff like that. But now knowing that motor in the Civic isn't great, I think I'd rather have a GTI myself as well. But I still think my pick would be Elantra N. But best of luck deciding between the two. Feel free to send me more emails or messages or, super chats, whatever in the future. I'm more than happy to discuss more with you. I also do the car consulting on my website. If you're unaware, I do that. If you want to have a one-on-one actual video chat, we can talk through stuff in real time. That can also help too if you'd like that help. But thank you so much for the super chat. And so we're just about the end here. And Jordan says, what should Kia Niro and 2017 Ioniq think and feel? Obsolete with the purchase, same as the 2015 Chevy Volt used buyers. No, I don't think. I think, with used stuff, you know what you're getting into. You're getting stuff that is old tech, but I think that's okay. I think it's, they're, again, for that affordability factor and people who understand they're not getting the cutting edge stuff. They're not getting stuff that'll last as long because it's older. But I think that, they're still good cars and still kind of serve their purpose. Again, for those people that need that lower entry point and still want to get that really good fuel economy. And Chad says, you have generic stickers as options. Can you add special ones like a GR Corolla? Yeah, so I have like the Bullet, I have the Fiat, and I have my reaction face. I could add a GR Corolla one, especially with the inside joke on that. Yeah, so I think That's an easy enough one. I think I can do that. Yeah, maybe I'll work on that this week. I'll try and put in a little jerk roll sticker. Thanks for the suggestion, Chad. And Nightbreaker says, never owned either a Volkswagen or a Hyundai. Gonna have to test drive both later this year. I appreciate the answer. Absolutely. Thank you again for the super chat. And yeah, test drive should be very illuminating for you. Hopefully that helps give you some clarity. And Jordan, thank you for a super chat here at the end. He says, with a new car intro, the Dodge Dart ended. How long should you wait to buy? The common wisdom is to wait until the second model year at least, because a lot of those bugs do get worked out in the first year. Now, I know other people who swear by buying the last year of a generation of something. Now, obviously, that means you're getting tail end of the tech and the everything else, the styling and everything, so that you really have to be worried about reliability. But for people who absolutely want zero problems, you go for like a last model year of a generation of a like Toyota or something, like, all the bugs, there'll be no bugs, and it'll be all worked out by that point. So surely, the longer you're willing to wait, the better, I would say. But I think typically the lion's share of stuff usually gets tackled in the first year. So second model year and beyond, I think you're okay. And this is, I will say that's kind of how we've done things. It's just kind of worked out that way with timing for us. But like, Mach-E came out in 2021 model year. We got a 2022. With the Lyric, they came out in 2023. Actually, we have a 2025. And I know, I had the press car as a 2024 Lyric, and that even had some issues. It, gave me a glitch with an error message on my week with the press car. And, I was like, okay, I understand, there's some issues they're still working on. I followed some of those issues and, made sure that stuff had been addressed. And now with our 2025, no glitches, knock on wood, just the build quality stuff. But, software wise, it's pretty good. Even the Fiat, I think that's kind of how I was comforted by that. I know a lot of people say, oh, you bought a electric Italian car. Good luck. But like, they debuted, I think, in 2020 in Europe. And so, by the time they showed up here on our shores, and mine's a 2024 model year, they had 4 years to work through all those kinks. And also, it was one of the best-selling EVs in Europe for many of those past 4 years. It was really a hot seller for a long time over there. So they sold a lot of them. They worked through all the bugs, figured all this stuff out. And that's why, again, knock on wood, my Fiat 500e has been flawless in its first year. Now, I only have like 1,300 miles on it, but, it seems like they're pretty stout and pretty reliable. And even the last generation Fiat 500e, one of the other Stellantis PR people that I actually know, he has a little Fiat 500e of the last generation as his little backup runaround car that he loves still driving it. It's, very old now at this point because it was the last generation, which I think they ended those in, what was it, 2017 was maybe the last year of the last Fiat 500e. But I haven't heard of any issues with his. I don't talk to them, very often, but, I think that they're, pretty solid. So that's kind of how I've been doing things. And, it hasn't really burned me too much. I will say, though, the Mini didn't help me any because that generation just was crappy all the way through. So even though those came out in 07, I had an 08, and still had all kinds of issues. And I think the very end of R56 maybe was a little bit better, but it still seems like a lot of those issues remained. And it was just, you go to the F56 in 2015, 2016 or whatever, and then you went to the B48 motor in that, and it's been, rock solid, super reliable for those. I think that's kind of the general consensus from me. But anyway, thank you all so much for all the super chats here tonight and all the great conversation. Well, we went 2.5 hours this one. This is one of the longer ones we've done. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for the great conversation, the great questions and comments. And we'll see you guys here on so for any of you who are still hanging around here, I won't be doing one on Wednesday. I actually will be, I won't be able to do a live on Wednesday night. So I will see you guys next Sunday for sure. For the next one here. Have a great week. Stay tuned. We'll see if there's more rants or not. Again, I always have to just wait and see what news pops up that day. But I'm sure there'll be, if nothing else, the car reviews here this week. So stay tuned for all that. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks so much again, and take care.